Hello everyone, welcome into our latest live video. It's Friday, it is the 16th of May 2025. I'm CareyHolzman and today we've got a brand new computer case that looks like it came from the 1980s or 1990s. I guess that would be more 90s. From our friends over at Silverstone. This originally this case design was an April Fool's Day joke from Silverstone where they basically took their HTPC case and they put a different face on it. And I think it was just drawn up. I don't think they actually made it. But everybody said, hey, if you make that, I'd buy it. And so 2 years later, here it is. This is a Silverstone FLP01, which I think stands for floppy. Actually, I think it's an FLP01W, with the W being white, although I would call it beige, which is more appropriate for this era. The beauty of it is it's a regular, everyday, modern computer case, only the face is different. In fact, they do sell the regular version that this is based off of still at Silverstone, along with this unit, which is very difficult to find for some reason. It's about a $150 case with no fans. And if you want something different, if you're not interested in following the groupthink, the mob mentality, and you want to do something truly original, or at least less common, imagine this old looking case with brand new parts in it, and imagine it's a bargain, because you're not going to waste any money on RGB. You're not going to waste any computer resources on RGB software. You're not going to have to deal with all the cable management that RGB brings along with it. Forget your liquid cooling. Forget all the fancy nonsense. So what we've got today is a system that motherboard rather, that I prepped probably back at Studio B or early on here. I can't remember. It's been sitting around a little bit. But this is just an ASUS Prime B760 Plus motherboard. This thing, its last BIOS update was January. I don't know why they've not updated it since then, but we've got a 14500 CPU, not a 600K. We don't have to buy a cooler. It comes with a cooler. We've got a couple sticks of DDR4. I think that's DDR4 RAM, and a 2 terabyte Fanxiang drive. Everything's budget. We'll throw a 500 watt EVGA power supply in there. It's like 50 bucks. And when it's all said and done, it's going to look exactly the same as it does now, except under the hood, we've got something that'll probably outpace most other people's computers while running virtually silently. Now, these Intel cooling fans that are stock aren't necessarily the quietest when they ramp up, but under normal idle circumstances, they're perfectly fine. And of course, the case is tall enough, it's deep enough if you wanted to put a more aggressive cooler in there and spend more money than you need to, because you can. Well, you can. I'm just trying to do this on a budget and show you you can build a very, very respectable machine without breaking the bank and still maintain a unique look that isn't just more RGB and aquariums. In fact, it's so different. These little fake floppy drives here, one of them folds down. So you can put a DVD drive in here, for example, and then when the DVD drawer opens, it gets pushed open. So it kind of tucks it away. And since I can't find a beige DVD drive, in fact, I don't really even use DVD drives, but I do have some laying around. I might as well put it in here, kind of complete the retro feel of it, but it'll remain hidden. And because it's hidden, it doesn't matter if the color doesn't match the beige. Down here, this one's even more interesting. If we push and release, behind this fake floppy fascia, here's our USB and audio ports. Come on, how cool is this? And of course, right over here, power button and reset button over here. I'll give you the full 360. You can put a couple fans in there to blow the air sideways. It's got 7 slots in the back, which means it's going to accept a full-size ATX motherboard, as well as a micro ATX motherboard, as well as a mini ITX motherboard. So yeah, it's pretty flexible in what kind of board you can put in there. Standard size power supply right over there. So you're not getting the small form factor or anything like that with a lot of other HTPCs that can cost more money and limit your choices of parts. So there it is. And we're going to talk more about that here in a moment. Let me say hello to everybody. Hope you're all having a great Friday. And let's see who's joining us in the chat today. This is going to be a fun build. Darren Gilholm says hello, along with Dazzle555. Hello to Eddie Casanova and Patrick T. Patrick joins us from Michigan, my home state. Luke Greenia says it's hot in Vermont. And that's yuck, I guess. Mark Gaines says hello, joining us from Northern Ireland. There's Doman 2000 and David Graham saying hello. We also have The One. He wants to know if I'll be installing any old operating systems. Absolutely not. I don't want to live in the past, but I don't mind having a little decorative, ornamental past novelty. But I absolutely need the practicality of functional technology that we and I use today. I don't use computers from the 1990s today, but I don't mind the look of it, kind of giving people this idea that there's an old computer under the hood. It's like what we call a sleeper in the automotive world. You take an old piece of crap car and you completely renovate. You take out the old inefficient engine, you put in something bigger, more powerful, I mean a lot more powerful, and you don't give any hint to any of the work under the hood from outside of the car. From the outside, it looks like an old car. And you go, wow, that's really nice. And then you fire it up and they hear it running and they're like, oh, that's not stock. That's my world. If you're gonna do something, like I don't want to restore an old car that has terrible suspension and terrible air conditioning or no air conditioning at all and terrible radio. That sounds miserable. Look, I put it back to stock. Oh, great. That's great. Let's all just go back 30, 40, 50 years and live the way we used to. And maybe we can bang a couple rocks together to make sparks to start a fire. I'm still going to use a lighter. But if I can enclose the lighter in an old 1930s housing, that's really cool to me anyway. So that's my idea. We're going to make a very modern machine that is capable of doing everything that any other computer can do, but we're going to wrap it in an old school wrapping. So from the outside, the untrained eye will think it's old. You turn it on, oh, it's definitely not going to be old. I think that's so cool. So I'm looking forward. This is going to be a fun build. Let's see. You know, honestly, if I wanted an old computer, I could go to the Goodwill store. I don't have to build one. They're already built and they're just tossing them away by the thousands. So there's plenty that are just sitting in the landfill or on their way to a recycling center that you can just purchase and be done with it. Peter Lakehawk, our friend Buster, joining us from Scotland with a 10-pound super chat, says, hello, Carey and Mara, and everyone in the chat. All the best from Bonnie, Scotland, where the temperature in Edinburgh is 52 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 11.11, that's very precise, degrees Celsius. Good to see you, Buster. Thank you for the super chat. Charlie Purdy renews membership, now a member for 11 months. He says, it's been a pleasure to be a member of this channel, unlike some other channels I've been on. I hope we're not like other channels. And thank you for being a member of our community. We're lucky to have you. Those other guys, they're missing out. Let's see. David Graham with a $5 super chat says, wow, nice pick of young and wiser Carey, older and wiser Carey, giving young Carey tips. That was the idea. Thank you, David. Frankie B with a $5 super chat. Thank you, Frankie. Let's see. Thomas MacT said 90 degrees in St. Petersburg, Florida. Hello, Carey, Mara, and members of chat. Welcome in, Thomas. 3D Everything says hello. Stealth Mode says hello. Andy Pete says hello. We also have Bajan Guy and Scott joining us. Charlie Purdy with a $20 super chat says, I am looking forward to this build. Right on. Thank you, Charlie. Me too. Where's Mara, our channel administrator? She's there in the chat hanging out with everybody. Be sure and give her a shout out and a hello. John Williams says hello. There's Martin Hogg saying hello from Scotland. Lawrence Pierre joins us and says hello, along with John Williams and Malcolm Maxwell. And who else do I see? Bill Stodd says hello. Parker Morris joining us. And Greg Dollar. LJ says hello. Rick Lakes, joining us from Minnesota, says hello. Well, I guess he survived his weather situation yesterday. Must not have been too bad. Just giving you a little excitement in your day, I guess. John Miller says hello. If you're watching us right now, I hope you're joining us in our chat room, because half of this video's appeal is 75%. 95% of this video's appeal is our community. And all you need to do is, while we're live, pop into the chat room and say hello. It doesn't matter if you think it's awkward, or you think you're awkward, or you think it's weird. It's called socializing. And it's amazing how just saying hello starts a ball rolling into what could be future friendships, where you don't want to miss out on other content just to visit with friends you may only see here in our chat room, who visit us regularly from around the world, and you could be next. If not for the content, then for the individuals, the community itself. And that's really the diamond. It's kind of a hidden diamond of this channel. The content, yeah, it's all right. But the community, unlike any you'll ever find of this size online, it's just very supportive. We're all very interested in this kind of stuff. We share a common interest. And the one rule is we're all kind. That's it. So if you can't be kind, yeah, it's not going to be for you. But I don't think that's a very high bar. We're all kind at some point to someone. So why not start today? All right. So looking back at this case, I just want to show you the Silverstone website. The way that they promote this case is, they don't have these big marketing dollars that other case manufacturers have. So this might have flown underneath your radar. And that's why I wanted to do it. Everybody talks about, hey, there's a new case from Fractal or NZXT or Corsair. These companies have big, big marketing dollars, and they will flood your feed with their latest designs. You can't get away from it. Other companies, they go under your radar with what may be even more desirable products at more appealing prices. But if nobody is buying them, right? If all the content creators are just waiting to get things for free, you're probably not going to find too many on this for that reason. Well, Silverstone does send out some units for free. They're not as big as these other companies, and they just don't have that kind of a budget. So that being said, the question is, what don't you know? Well, some of the content coming from resources that are more plentiful is still interesting. It's not the whole story. There's still other things to consider. And the question is, well, what are these things? Well, this is an example of that. And let's take a look at Silverstone's website here, which they have the FLP01, which is their retro-inspired home theater personal computer HTPC chassis. Universal cage design, drive cage, compatible with 5.5, 3.5, and 2.5-inch storage drives. Equipped with one USB Type-C port in there, as well as a retro floppy disk style optical bay drive cover we've already discussed. Positive air pressure design ensures superior cooling performance, quieter operations, and effective dust prevention. I guess that assumes you're adding fans, which we don't really need to do, but we might. We'll see how today's video goes. It should be a pretty easy build today, now that I've jinxed myself. Includes quick access filters for easy maintenance. That's good. And then they've got their stock product photos here. Let's just do that. Pretty much exactly what I'm showing you here on the bench. And there's the top of the unit right there. Okay, so you could stack your monitor on top of it, old school. And then there's an example of where 2.5-inch drives can go, 3.5-inch mechanical drive, floppy disk, etc. You'll see there's a drive tray underneath what would hold an optical drive or other 5.25-inch device. And if we continue scrolling down, there's a nice close-up behind that lower fake floppy disk cover that shows the USB Type-C and 2 USB Type-A's and your 3.5mm audio jack. We've got fitment even possibly for the SSI CEB, which are the really big motherboards, which I'm not a big fan of. So they're basically server motherboards. This case will actually, I'm surprised, accept that. My main concern are these three main styles here. The mini, it won't let me highlight it. The ATX, the micro ATX, and the mini ITX are the most common consumer-based motherboards sold. And you can throw a video card in there up to 133 millimeters wide, 309 millimeters in length. So in there, they've got a big old GeForce RTX in there. And I'm not going to do that, but you can. This is not a typical HTPC where they're often trying to make them really tiny. No, this is really something you want people to see it. And it does show 138 millimeter height for a CPU cooler. If you want to go to something larger, that's pretty decent, 13.8 centimeters. And then over here on the side, 170 millimeter for what looks to be the side fans. That's an unusual size, so I'm not quite sure. We'll look more into that later. But as you can see, you can put 5 1/4 inch drives, 3.5 inch drives, or 2.5 inch drives instead of an optical drive behind the fake fascia of the floppies. And then below it, you can also add either another 3 or 3.5 or 2.5 inch drive. So you can have a total of 3 drives in this, which again, I'm not a promoter of that. I think put all your stuff externally, just have a boot drive, you're good to go. The rear case fan will support an 80 millimeter or 120. My concern is the 80 millimeter fans being smaller will spin faster, thereby not be as quiet, but fan technology's come a long way. So it looks like, you know, we could put a couple of 80 millimeter fans here on the back. I don't have any of those because I'm just now realizing that those aren't standard 120 or 140s. Now in the back, that is a standard 120. So whether or not we want to do 3 80s just so they all are the same, or we want to put a 120 because we care more about airflow. And then it's important because these up here, you also have the ability to add more 120 millimeter fans. So you don't really need to add any fans out the back here. We need to consider the direction of our airflow. Having air blowing in and then out means it won't reach this side of the case, not much of it. And it almost looks like I see a support here where air is coming in this direction. So we'll have to determine how many fans we want to use. And I will tell you, with this motherboard and the parts we're using today, we won't need any of these fans. They're completely optional for today's build. If you were to generate more heat with a higher end CPU or adding an external or a discrete graphics card, then you definitely want to have some air helping that graphics card stay cool. And that's in any case, not just this one. So for that reason, we don't really need to worry about these fans. Our power supply has a fan, our CPU cooler has a fan, and that's all it needs to keep it cool. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. A little bit more on the specifications here: model number, cooling, expansion slots. It says you need to remove the optical disk drive if you want to install up to 138 millimeter wide cooler, I suppose. That would be width and not height. Let's see, what else does it say? Limitation of power supply, 170 millimeters in length. So, but a standard PS2 ATX power supply should be fine. It's those extra large ones. Those long power supplies are 1,000 watts, 1,500 watts. They're probably not going to fit in here. But then what are you doing? And this isn't really designed for that type of use case scenario. Not that you can't do it, but just be aware that when you're shopping for a power supply, if you're looking at a power supply that looks longer than what you're accustomed to seeing, it probably will not fit in this case, regardless of its wattage. The case is completely empty. It doesn't come with any accessories. We've got our manual, product sheet, etc. And of course, Silverstone does make PC accessories, from fans to coolers, etc., and lots of other PC accessories. They make power supplies. They make other computer cases. They make server cases. They make storage bays. As I mentioned, they make coolers, including liquid coolers. We've worked with a few of their liquid coolers before. Here are some of their fans and their Expansion cards, they make a lot of expansion cards. When you're looking for that weird device to convert something into something, you want to add USB type C to your computer and you don't have it, they probably make an adapter for it, or an add-in card. And it goes on and on and on and on and on with different types of accessories and expansion cards. And over here it says OEM. That would be original equipment. That's, you know, for industry buying. So that doesn't apply to us. So let me get back over to camera 1. Okay, with that, our motherboard, 14500 Intel, not a K, comes with a cooler. What else do I have in here? I've got my little index card, and I need my glasses. It's 32 gigs of DDR5. I think I thought this was DDR4. This is DDR5 OLOy RAM, and we've got 2 sticks of 16, totaling 32. We've got a 1 terabyte Fanxiang S880 Gen 4 NVMe drive, and we prepped all this in a prior video a couple months ago. I already have Windows 11 Pro. I've gone through and updated it, and I've also looked for the latest BIOS last night so we could just get right to the building. And there has been no update in the BIOS. I do have a note here that the Armory Crate software was causing our NVMe drive to run at Gen 3 speeds. But there was an update to the Armory Crate, which I installed. And I did test the Gen 4 Fanxiang, and we are getting 7,000 plus megabytes per second. This is a screamer. I'm telling you, there's nothing to be turning your nose up at. And you don't have to spend $1,000. This is under $1,000. Probably closer to $700 to $800. Maybe the most expensive part of this whole thing will be the CPU, which is probably around, I don't know, $250, and the case at $150. Everything else is pretty inexpensive by comparison, for sure. So this is a machine that you can build very easily. It should be a very easy case to work in. And when you're done, you'll have something likely none of your friends have. You have something that, well, you didn't mod it yourself. It's so uncommon. The likelihood of you running into anybody else who has one is highly unlikely. So if that's important to you, you want to be different, you want to stand out, or you just don't want to follow the crowd and do what everybody else does, it's already done for you. You don't have to create it from scratch. I love this. I think this is a brilliant idea, and I'm kind of happy it's not getting more traction, because if everybody starts doing this, I don't want it anymore. All right, so let me get back over to the chat room. Samuel Nason says a big hello to Carey and Mara. Welcome in, Samuel. Just try to catch up here with the chat. So I might skip some things, or I might overlook some things as I'm kind of rushing through it, because I'm anxious to get started. Will it support a tower or a liquid cooler? I do not believe that it will support a liquid cooler, but it might. It actually might. I have to wait till I get into it there, and we'll take a look. But if these are two 140s, or sorry, if these are two 120s back here side by side, then it makes sense that a 120 millimeter radiator will fit, depending on where our motherboard is seating in there. So I don't know yet. We'll find out together. Generally speaking, putting a liquid cooler on a computer like this would be for a different purpose than a home theater PC. Just like showing that graphics card in there. There's a lot of things you can do if you choose to. I'm trying to keep it in the genre of which it was designed, as a home theater PC. So if I put a liquid cooler on this, it's completely a waste of money. Just the idea behind this build is I'm showing you how you can do, how you can create by yourself your own custom computer and keep the price low. And you're asking me, can I spend more money? Generally, the answer is yes, but that defeats what I'm trying to accomplish today. So, but we'll take a look at that and see if that's possible for those of you who just don't want to save money and you want to spend it and you want to utilize a case in a way that it wasn't designed. I mean, the case may handle that okay, but it's definitely not what my goal is. Not with this case. Now, if I have a K-series CPU, one that doesn't come with a cooler, so I've got to buy one anyway. If I've got a glass panel where you can see the RGB of the cooler, because many coolers are RGB, plus the additional cable management that you're going to have to deal with, you don't really have anywhere to manage cables in here. On the other hand, you also don't have any glass panel. Nobody can see it. Nobody's going to know you're running a liquid cooler. That's just on you. And the only reason you would absolutely require that is if you were putting in a much higher end, more expensive CPU, which would require a more expensive cooler, which would then probably justify a higher end power supply and maybe even a graphics card. And you'll take this $800 computer and turn it into a $2,000 computer. But again, it's not what I'm trying to do here. And we'll see what we can do once we get in there, because I've got no documentation that I'm looking at, no rehearsals. I'm looking at this for the very first time and intuitively seeing how it's laid out. So these videos are live, and sometimes we run into situations we didn't foresee, and we handle it accordingly and learn along the way. So thank you for joining me on this little journey. Should be a fun one, and I think it's all going to click right into place because we're not overspending and overcomplicating it. Keep it simple. You bring the price down, you make the build faster, less prone to problems. All liquid coolers fail. This will never fail. Worst case scenario is you have a fan go out. But with a liquid cooler, the pumps all will fail. So if you install a liquid cooler and you keep that computer for a while, you will eventually have to replace that liquid cooler. If you spend less money on an air cooler, and again, where nobody can see it, that air cooler will last the life of the entire computer. The worst that can happen, and it likely won't, but the worst that can happen is you have to replace just the fan. So what? So things to keep in mind. You can spend more and make your life more complicated, but that's not what I'm trying to do today. Bryce Hosking says, do I hear more construction? You do. Yeah, you'll be hearing that for the next 3 weeks. I apologize for any background noise, but that is the sound of progress. Nick Poverman says hello. He says it needs a Packard Bell logo on it. I bet I could go on eBay and buy one, stick it on there. Frankie B said that's a big boy case. You know what? It's really not that bad. It's very much the size of the way computers used to be. It may be a little taller, but width-wise, it's very, very similar to an old AT style build back in the day. Very close. But it's definitely not like the Apache helicopter or Robot's Foot or something, you know, the Antec Torque, where these massive cases that need 2 people to lift them, like the Cosmos case, you know, that literally took 2 people to lift it up. This is not that. This is more just old school. But it's definitely not a mini PC, if that's what you're comparing it to. Dan Nilsson says hello. There's Bruins in the chat room, Bruins44. He says it reminds him of his first PC clone from Leading Edge with dual floppy drives. Love it. Patrick G said my first PC was an Intel 386SX desktop. The monitor could go on it, yeah. Upgraded it to Windows 95. A little bit longer, even installed a Revel TV card inside. And loading took a long time. Attila says, would you use the hybrid mode setting on your power supply? Yeah, I would. Yeah. All that does is turn the fan on when it's needed. With the hybrid mode off on a power supply, and not all power supplies have that feature. Most power supplies, if it's on, the fan's on. With a hybrid power supply, when the power supply is on and it's generating enough heat that it needs to be cooled, then the fan kicks on, just like you'll often see fans on a video card behave the same way. So if I had that feature, I would absolutely turn it on because it's going to reduce the amount of dust coming into your computer. Okay, well, I think we're ready to get started. Shane Perkins says, I would love a 90s full tower case with 10 bays. You can have them all. There's no shortage of them. Just look on eBay and other places. They're everywhere. They're expensive to ship because they're heavy, they're bulky, and if they dent in shipping, too bad. You get a hammer and pound it out, and it'll always have like a wrinkle. Unless you're good with metal work, it'll always be sort of deformed. They also yellow. The plastic will yellow with age. It gets this disgusting yellow. And if you know how to clean that out, good on you. But yeah, there's millions of those, millions of full-size tower cases from the 90s. Probably hundreds of millions. They're not hard to find. A lot of recycling centers have them, and they're often sold in places like Facebook Marketplace and eBay especially. But you will die when you see the shipping cost. They're expensive. All right, let's get this thing opened up and see what's inside. Time for my glasses. And just go over here so I can see myself. See what we got in here. You know, one screw here and one screw here. So very similar to a tower computer case laying on its side. Screw on the top, screw on the bottom, and the panel slides off. The only difference is our orientation. Otherwise, the panel's the same. I love this color. It's that old school beige. It's not black and it's not white. Everything today is black or white. Why do we have to live in a world of absolutes? Where's our grays? Where's the other 16.8 million colors of the rainbow that my video card can generate? And then inside, oh, we do have one fan. I am mistaken. I thought it didn't come with any. We have one fan up here, and that fan, because of this bracket, there's no room to mount a radiator here. So this isn't going to work. Maybe a 120 millimeter single radiator, but at that point, why bother? And then down here, it looks like the fans are too far apart for a radiator to fit in here. But you know what? I don't even see if we turn this the other way, what I find interesting in this design is there are mounting holes for a fan here on what would be your right side. But on the left side, it's just a hole with a big fan vent that doesn't have any holes to mount a fan. So what I'm curious about is if we pull these little covers off, see there's holes there to mount a fan of that size or of the inner diameter, probably the 80 millimeter right there. And if we take the other one off, it doesn't look like there's any way to mount a fan here. It's just ventilation. I don't see any holes surrounding this. So there'd be no way to mount a 240 radiator along this side, and there wouldn't be along this side unless you took this entire cage out, this cage right here, which would then remove your ability to have any drives or optical drives. So you could do that. I don't know why you would, but you could. So these come off to be dusted. They have filters in them. I'll set them aside here just because I'm kind of breaking it down to get an idea of what's in here and how it's laid out. Again, this is my first time looking at it. We only have one standoff installed, which is weird. I'm accustomed to having standoffs placed in the standard ATX positions, but I guess it's anyone's ball game in this design. There is no hard and fast rule that most people will build with ATX, micro ATX, or mini ATX. So I suppose the logic is, we'll give you the standoffs. We know you're going to use the middle one on all three of those sizes, but we don't know what other ones you might need depending on which motherboard size you're using, and therefore we'll just give you the standoffs. You put them in yourself. Okay, I'm fine with it. The standoffs are silver. It'd be kind of fun if they were the brass color, but no one's going to see them. And then in here we have a bag with some screws and documentation. And if I go a little bit closer with camera 2, see that a little better. So just a one-page sheet, and then some screws, some zip ties, our standoffs, And there are some rubber grommets here, likely for mounting smaller drives into the drive bracket. That's usually what those are used for. And then I don't want to lose our case screws. Those are the case cover screws. And then going back to the wide shot here, you can also see our umbilicals. Oh, there's 2 standoffs. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, this is set up like a mini ITX setup, now that I'm getting a better look at it. And maybe those 4 are universally used on all ATX, micro ATX, and ITX. I don't know yet. We'll align that when we put the board in. I know the board has like 8 or 9 screws it needs, and I know 4 is a smaller number than that. So one way or another, we're going to be adding standoffs. Whether or not we need to move any of the 4 pre-installed ones, well, that's yet to be determined. Up here would be space for 2 80mm fans. I don't think I would use those. They do tend to be a bit loud, and this system will not require any fans at all. The CPU cooler and the power supply have the 2 fans. That's all it needs, and it'll never overheat. That being said, it wouldn't hurt to put fans on one side or the other just to help usher the air through. And on a case like this, we don't traditionally bring air in from the front and out the back like a tower, but instead we bring it in from the right and go out the left, or bring it in from the left and go out the right. If you're going to go side to side, then don't put any fans front and back. If you want to go front and back, then don't put any fans side to side, because it interferes with your airflow. Imagine a river. The river is going to flow at a certain speed in one direction. And if another river coming the other way intersects it, you'll get a whirlpool. And what happens in the whirlpool is the speed at which the water is traveling is interrupted. Now, if into that whirlpool we also branch off to the right and left, and that river starts going opposite directions, the speed continues to slow down, and the size of the river and the flow of the water is significantly reduced compared to just one wide river moving in one direction. The same is how airflow works. It's no different. If you're curious about what the bottom of the machine looks like, we've got these chrome feet which are visible from the front. See how they're kind of polished? But the feet in the back that you can't see from, having this sit on the desk, you can't see behind that. These are just little rubber nubs. And, it makes sense. You can't see it. Why spend the money for the fancy feet when you can just get away with a cheaper thing here that no one's going to see when it's sitting down like this? That's all you're going to see are the silver feet. So, all right. We have this bracket up along the top, and this seems to do 2 things. It prevents the case from kind of folding in on itself if you're picking it up or putting a lot of pressure. It's adding extra rigidity, but it's also adding a support for the floppy, what do you want to call it? The 5 1/4 inch bay, I guess would be the right way to call it. If you're curious what that bay looks like, it's just old school. It's no different than the way they used to do it. 4 little screws here, and it'll lift right out. For most of you, you probably won't even need to take this out, but I'm going to take it out just to show you. And that's going to lift out. Usually it's just straight up. Yep, and it's got a little nub that fits into a hole here so that it's aligned properly. And you can't put it in this way. I don't think it will fit any direction but one. Yeah, that's not reversible. So if you're having trouble seating it back in, you've got to know the orientation where there's a gap right here, and there is no gap. If you look at this and how it comes in, that's the front of the case. Where it's completely flat, that's the back. When you set it in there, it should align, and the little nubs will go into those little holes. And that allows you to slide it. No, it doesn't even slide. It locks in, and then you just use the screws to secure it in place. And that gives you another better look inside with regards to the layout with the fans. I guess it makes sense that it just has that one fan. It won't do us much good to have a fan next to that because, well, I take it back. This fan probably would be, it's likely here to blow air over mechanical drives or things that would get hot. I was just thinking of the optical drive. That won't help us over here. Over here, you'll have open area for the air to flow through the entire case. If you wanted to, you could put fans all around this thing, but I think you're just wasting money. I think there is options, but not intended to be used entirely, and you can't even use this space here. This is not mountable for a fan. So I think, you know, kudos to Silverstone for putting the brakes on these fan-obsessed people that will, you know, if they see a hole, they have to fill it, and it doesn't matter how much it costs or if it's complete nonsense, adding noise and dust and causing more harm than good. A lot of case manufacturers will let you do that harm to yourself, both mentally and financially. So kudos to Silverstone for putting a kibosh on that. A case this small does not need 9 fans. How'd I get to 9? You got 2 here, potentially, 2 here, 2 here, that's 6. You've got a power supply fan, that's 7. You got a CPU fan, that's 8. And am I off by 1? 1, 2, 3, 4. Assuming you could put a fan here, 5, 6. CPU 7. Power supply is 8. That's ridiculous. For a case this small, what are you thinking? If you can actually show me that you have heat problems, that adding all of those fans is the only way you can resolve it, or is a way you can resolve it, show me the evidence. Ain't gonna happen. You've built something very wrong. You've done something wrong, and now you're trying to cover up your mistake with fans acting as band-aids. If you built it right with the right equipment, you shouldn't need to add any fans other than what's included. In other words, they've included one fan for one reason. That's all you need. And I would argue you don't even need it. That's assuming you're putting mechanical drives in it. Your CPU comes with a fan. It comes with the fan it needs, not with the one you think it needs. Until you prove that otherwise, you don't need to replace it. Just because you're reading Reddit and you're watching YouTube videos doesn't mean what you're seeing applies to you. Same goes with power supply. It has the size of fan it needs. You don't see many people replacing power supply fans or checking their power supply temps, and yet that's the thing you should be monitoring the most. And it's the one thing other YouTube channels don't discuss. And I guess if they don't discuss it, then you don't know. And if you don't know, then you think everything is fine and you're living in your own little world of imagination and impression from the information you received that didn't even apply to you to begin with. So I see people spending money needlessly on hardware that does not benefit them because they saw somebody on a YouTube channel do it or even recommend it. Without knowing you, how can I recommend anything? It's very irresponsible. And then on top of that, you're adding noise, you're bringing in more dust, and you're completely, in most cases, ignoring the health of the power supply because you cannot monitor it without using your eyeballs and your brain. There's no software, there's no tool. It's you. You're the software, you're the hardware. You don't just push a button. You've got to use the ability of being human because that's far superior than anything that technology can replicate, at least in 2025. So with that, let's get the bracket out just because we can. Again, I don't think we necessarily need to, but just to show you the disassembly here, looks like all the screws are the same, so we don't have to worry about which screws go where. That should lift up and then typically it moves away. Oh, there's a screw in the back. Okay, right here. We'll just lift that right out. Super easy. Set it right over here. Now we have just a beautimous area to work in. Look how open and free that is. The days of yore. How I miss them so. Now this got really light. Our front port umbilicals, we can get this wire tie removed and just drape them over the side. That's going to be your front port. What do we have? We have a power switch, hard drive LED, and power LED. That's it. Where's the reset? Oh, right over here. And reset. Right on. So we got all four. Some cases today, they don't give you a reset anymore. They may not give you a hard drive LED anymore. This is USB 3.1 Type-C connector. Your motherboard supports it. Yes, we do. USB 3 Type-A connector for the front panel and front panel audio. It couldn't be any easier than this, folks. It really couldn't. It's got everything you need and nothing you don't. If you want to go buy stuff you don't need, you go without me. When it comes to aligning the standoffs, I suppose I need to get the screws out of here. Now, Silverstone just gives you a Ziploc bag with all the combined screws and standoffs mishmashed together. Not a big fan of that, but that's fine. Then we've got these little grommets in here. You get 4 of them, and those would fit into these open slots where the grommet fits in the hole and then slides in to lock in, say, a 2.5-inch drive or a 3.5-inch drive, I suppose. Whichever one of those it is. What the heck is a 2.5-inch drive? I don't even know if I know what a 2.5-inch drive is. Now I'm all confused. Is it 2.5 or 3.5? Well, regardless, with regular mechanical style hard drives, the full-size ones, you just use the screws to secure them as you would any other way. When we're using the smaller drives, they're going to fit. Actually, that's 5 1/4 inch. Now that I'm looking at it, it looks like that's a way to mount. Hold on. A mechanical hard drive, just a regular desktop hard drive, is a 3.5-inch drive. The little smaller versions, those are 2.5-inch drives. And the 5 1/4, those are your bays. All right, that's this area, 5 1/4, and this area is 3.5 from here to here. And those are spaced out 3.5 inches. So if you wanted to put a small like SSD in there, then you've got these small holes that are 2.5 inches apart. I apologize for my momentary lapse of synapses firing correctly, but that seems to be happening more and more the older you get. It's not me. I'm not getting any older. You guys are. That's what I keep telling myself. Do you believe me? All right, let's just take a look at what we got in the bag. So we've got standoffs, we've got the little screws, we've got some screws that have shoulders that are likely for mounting the hard drives. Oddly, there's no fan screws, which is fine with me because usually when you buy a fan, it comes with screws. But that usually the case gives you fan screws and the fan gives you fan screws, and then I end up with more fan screws than any other kind. So that doesn't bother me none. I suppose if you're using an old fan laying around, you should have saved the screws. If you buy a new fan, it always comes with screws. So the fact that they have not included any fan screws, I'm fine with it. So we're going to need some standoffs. This motherboard has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 mounting points. We've got 4 standoffs. That means we need 5 more. So in the bag, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, no. Psych. Ooh, there's some real teeny tiny screws. Those are probably for 2.5-inch SATA drives. Whenever you're affixing a drive from the bottom, you don't want the screw to be too deep and then hit the circuit board inside. That would be bad. Is that all I have? Is 4? Because if they're saying they support those extra big motherboards, I think we'd have at least 2 or 3 more. Maybe shorten us a little bit on them standoffs, Silverstone. It's a weird place to cut corners. I don't see any more. I think all I got's 4, and with 4 installed, that's 8. That means I'm going to have 1 missing. I'm a little disappointed at that, but it's not the end of the world. Okay. I'm going to dry fit this just to get an idea of where these screws need to go, and the way this is going to align is where the floppy drives are here will be in line with our CPU. So if I bring this up, with the I/O going to this big slot back. I don't know how you can see it. Towards the back here. That means the board will be oriented this direction. And yes, the two standoffs on top do align, as do the two standoffs in the middle. So it must be a universal. Those 4 screws are used on mini ITX, micro ATX, and ATX, so they don't have to be moved. But additionally, we have space for 3 more standoffs at the bottom. And there is a space for 2 standoffs additionally. And they have shorted us by 1 standoff. It's kind of disappointing. Now, I have plenty of extra standoffs, or I can use even a plastic nylon standoff, which just clicks in. I'm just curious if the motherboard tray supports those locations, if that's why they didn't give us the standoff. But from what I'm seeing, I do have a hole there. I have a hole here, there. Yeah. So I don't know why they've given us all those holes, but not given us enough standoffs. That's kind of weird. Okay, not the end of the world, but let's see where we go. If we start putting the standoffs in, I know like I say, the 4 that are up here are in the right position. We don't need to move those or remove those. There's also no extra ones that we can remove that I can tell. Oh, wait a minute. They've given us 6. Oh, we're okay. I miscalculated. We're okay. So we have, I'll show you, it's kind of hard to see. We've got 2 standoffs here, 2 standoffs here, and 2 standoffs up there for a total of 6. With the additional 4 means we have 10. We need 9. There's the extra one. Now it all makes sense. That's on me. My bad. So if we have 6 and we need 9, we only add 3, and we're going to have 1 left over. So what that means is essentially they've given you all the standoffs to go from the center of the board all the way to the I/O. Any board wider than that, so these 3 holes, 1, 2, and 3, those are the standoffs we have to add. That makes perfect sense. I get it now. I'm a little slow sometimes. And so we'll just get these started, and they go right in line. So where the other 2 are, these go in the exact same straight line a few inches away. There's no altitude variation with regards to, you know, being higher or lower. Straight line, 3 across, 3 times. 3 across the bottom, 3 across the middle, 3 across the top. I don't recommend using pliers to tighten these down. A 5mm socket is what's required to do it right. I have a 5mm socket reserved for just this occasion, and they're very inexpensive to buy the bit. If you have a screwdriver, you just buy the bit for $2. And you know, the nuts that were on the back of like VGA ports on the back of the board, they're all 5mm. So it's not like this isn't going to come up in other areas of life, perhaps that you're working on things, even though the idea of securing in VGA and DVI and parallel ports and serial ports has all kind of gone the way of the dodo. Sometimes, once in a while, you still run into some things that still use those outside of these motherboard standoffs. But even if for nothing more than motherboard standoffs, it's way better than using a pair of pliers. It's safer, it doesn't cause any damage to the standoff. You're not going to have any little metal shavings underneath your motherboard that could get into something someday and cause your motherboard to fail, and then you're going to be upset because you're going to blame the motherboard maker or somebody else. So for that reason, now look, there's a way to use pliers safely. You can put a cloth around it and then use the pliers, but the problem with pliers also is you can apply too much torque and not realize, and then you strip the whole thing out and the whole motherboard tray now, it's shot. So it's not critical that we use all 9 standoffs. If you don't want to be professional, you don't have to be. If you think it's okay to buy, say, a Dell or an HP computer and open it up and have half the screws missing and you're okay with that, doesn't bother me. And if you think that those screws aren't necessary, that's okay with me too. Dell and HP will disagree with you, because if any company would try to save a fraction of a penny removing a screw that wasn't needed, they'd be the first to lead the way. Since I am trying to be as professional as possible, I don't want my customers to obviously identify differences between what I build and how it's built to a computer that's pre-built from a large manufacturer. So they might say, for example, you know, I was just looking at the computer you built me, Carey, and I noticed there's some places where screws could go, and I've never seen that on a Dell or HP before. And oh, don't worry about it, those aren't needed. I don't want to have that discussion. I want to build it professionally. You don't have to build it professionally. If you want to put one screw in there, go right ahead. It's not professional if you want to be like a hack. I don't mind. I'm not buying anything from you. I just realized why this is here. The reason why you can't put a fan here is that's where the power supply goes. And so your power supply fan is going to face towards the bottom, and that's why you cannot affix a fan here. See, it's all coming together now. Without reading any documentation and just kind of orienting myself with the layout of the case, suddenly things become clearer, whether it's my initial impression of the standoff locations or even why this does not have the added fan. Now it makes sense. That's the power supply fan, and that's why there's a filter on the other side. Bango, bingo, perfect, logical, love it. All right. That's the fun part of these videos, is we get to figure this stuff out together. Now I'm going to just get this out of the way for a moment, because this motherboard still uses a separate I/O shield. Some fancier boards these days have the I/O shield built in. And if I'm a good boy, I put all my spare parts in this box so I don't have to go wondering, where did my I/O shield go? Haha, there it is. Just what I was looking for. So we're going to pop this back over here for a second so I can put this in. And the 3 holes align with the IE slot covers here. We'll just align that. Real easy to get in here. It's not difficult like other cases. So some people struggle putting the I/O shield in because the cases can be difficult. But this case couldn't be any easier. You can clearly see everything. You've got to get around and have full access to it, even if you have large hands. No big deal. And so we just pop that in. It's a little awkward for me to work this way. Hold on a second. I like to put the bottom in first, then the sides, and then the top. But it's nothing. It's super easy. Okay, and now when I seat the board back in, it should align with those holes in our I/O, along with the standoffs we just installed. And it should fit like a glove. Now there are some metal straps here that I want to be very aware of bending up. I don't want to trap any of the grounding straps down beneath. That would be bad, okay? And I love that I can see it so easily with this case. This I/O shield has a lot of those grounding straps. I see 2 here, 2 over here, and where were the ones? Oh, right here at the top of this. A lot of modern I/O shields don't do that anymore, but this is still a modern I/O shield, and they're still doing this old school grounding strap thing that really gets in the way for a lot of first-time builders or even experienced builders that are building in a hurry, and then they don't realize until it's all done that their USB port is being blocked. Or you can see this one right down here, if I can go to a close-up camera, has done exactly that. And you want to catch this now, because it's very easy to just pull the board out and make that adjustment where it needs to be. Where did I see it? Try it again. Oh, it's down here. Boy, that one's hard to see. So these grounding straps I just need to push them down. We still want them to make contact. But you know what? Even if they didn't make contact, even if one grounding strap makes contact and none of the others do, this is all conductive and it all shares accordingly. But I do want to use them because that's what they're there for. But if they're not perfectly aligned, then you can end up blocking one of your USB ports, HDMI ports, display port. So be sure if you have to add your I/O shield and your I/O shield has those little metal pokey things on the back side of it, make sure you use a finger and lift those up so that they sit above the I/O but not inside of the I/O, which you might be able to see here in this photo. You look carefully where those metal pieces are. They don't have to be perfectly straight. Just bend them up, and ideally they will make contact with the top of the metal of the I/O. And if everything is aligned correctly, which it is not because these have not, our I/O for audio has not popped through these holes, so I got to shift it a little bit to one side. And I can still see where the USB Type-C is. We're still running into a little bit of ground strap interference there. So this is a bad I/O design, in my opinion, from ASUS. The motherboard maker is the one who provides the I/O cover. And I think the best way for me to get at this particular one, which is very unusual for the I/O straps to come up from the bottom versus the top, I think the best way would be to get a small screwdriver so I can visually see how far up they are, because I'm guessing when I push them down. And clearly my guess is way off because I cannot move the motherboard forward. These I/O grounding straps are preventing me from going forward. So I'm going to just flatten them out. And I don't recall encountering this with any I/O shield before, so I think ASUS went the wrong direction on that. Any sort of resistance that I have pulling that motherboard towards this I/O shield is coming from those grounding straps pushing back. So there's a delicate balance between having the grounding strap in your way and having it so far out of the way it's not even working as a grounding strap anymore. So it doesn't have to be perfect, but I do try my best to get it as close to perfect as I can. So now my trick is, while I'm watching the grounding straps that need to go on the top, I'm also trying to watch those two darn grounding straps at the bottom. And I could take the I/O shield out with a pair of pliers and bend them completely flat. They're not required, but I do want to use them if I can. Oh, and check my email. All right, well, let me see if I can do this first. I'm so close. Yeah, so there's two grounding straps here that sit flat. So this I/O shield is one of the worst I've ever worked on ever in the history of motherboards. And this is a modern motherboard. Here's the problem. We got grounding straps coming up like this. We got grounding straps coming down like that. And we've got grounding straps coming out sideways that are meant to just lean against the edges of the frame of the I/O. ASUS went above and beyond for covering this for grounding, and the way they implemented it was the cheapest way possible by punching the metal with a tool and job done. So none of it's aligned right, and there's so many of them. So the ones that come out sideways, those are just meant to lean against the edges. They won't interfere with the port. But the ones that come up from the bottom or down from the top, those can block access to your port. That's what I'm trying to avoid right now, is to make sure that this does seat correctly. And I keep seeing the grounding straps going inside of this USB port when I'm setting the motherboard in. And as I'm focusing on that, then these over here are getting into the network. What is that? Yeah, it's getting into our RJ45. And now I can't seem to get the audio I/O aligned. So when you're shopping for a motherboard and you see a motherboard that already has the I/O shield built onto it, you won't have this as a possibility. Not that all removable I/O shields are this difficult, especially on a modern motherboard, but they're out there, so just know. Yeah, I gotta say, these little ones that are over my USB Type-C are a pain in the butt. And I think what I want to do, I think I just want to bend them down. So in this case, I grab some needle nose. Ideally, you just take the I/O shield out and bend it down. It'd be a lot easier than what I'm about to do. That is one of the worst designed I/O shields I've ever seen. And if you took all these grounding straps and cut them out, you probably wouldn't notice any difference. A lot of times somebody might call and say, hey, when I go to plug something USB into my computer, I feel a static shock and the computer reboots. And that's what these are supposed to help prevent, is that when you're touching it with a static shock, that the I/O shield grounds that instead of carrying it across the board. A lot of times it still will cause the board to reboot. Your solution is to spray your carpet down with some fabric softener to get rid of the static, and to do that periodically as needed. They also sell overly priced anti-static spray, but fabric softener in a spray bottle will accomplish the same task for a fraction of the price, and that way you don't have to worry about the importance so much of these I/O or grounding straps. Now, that might be good. Still a little hard for me to tell, so I'm going to grab a flashlight just to take a closer look. Again, this is really a retro build, because we used to worry about stuff like this when putting I/O on in the 90s. For ASUS to make an I/O shield like that today is embarrassing. I don't know of anybody else that'll sell you an I/O shield with that many grounding straps. And most of them just have a foil backing now with a sponge behind it. That's creating the same exact thing that's probably much, much more effective without any of the hassle. I mean, zero hassle with the foil sponge thing. So yeah, HDMI is clear. This has a VGA port for some reason. That's clear. And it has those 5mm. I was just talking about these. See, every once in a while, you still will run into a motherboard that has these little nuts on the side of the old school VGA. And having that 5mm socket that I used for the standoffs also fits on these screws here that loosen up because customers over tighten their VGA cables, right? So this comes in handy a lot. It's not just for standoffs. I'm so glad I got to demonstrate that. Now we can take we have one extra standoff. Those are the case screws and such. So we need different screws for the standoff. And which screws are those? Let's take a quick look here and see. I'm going to guess they're just like the case screws. Let's see if it fits. Yep, them's the one. That's the way I would have done it. Let me get this secured. We'll check email after that. So let's see. Got to push it forward a little bit. Here's one of 9. 2. 3. 4. 5. 6. I'm not just grabbing any screw, I'm looking for the right screw, and we're using 9 of the same screw. We're not doing this close enough thing. Again, if Dell and HP are making all the same screws for mounting the drives versus mounting the motherboards, and there's a variation between which one is used, it's not, there's a brown screw and a silver screw and a gold screw and a machine screw and a wood screw. That is just basically advertising to the world you don't care or you don't know what you're doing. In either case, unacceptable for me and my standards, but you know, you absolutely can do a hack job if you want to. I don't sink that low. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right. If I can't do it right, I'm going to hire somebody to do it for me. That's how it is in my world. Everything else right now is just extra, so I'm going to just put this all back in here momentarily. And oh, my browser crashed, so I've not been able to see the chat room. Back over here. Kevin Doan joins us and says hello. Born Joker. Obviously a hack who thinks 2 screws is plenty. You ain't working for me. And if you did it at Dell, you wouldn't be working at Dell either. So clearly you live in a world of your own where you think things are good enough. And you know, for you, that's fine. But to work being paid by somebody else to do a hack job, no, we're better off not having you if that's your attitude. So to each your own. Some people fix everything with duct tape. I'm not one of those people. I don't even own a roll of duct tape. Okay. Set that down and keep looking through the chat. Chris Johnson joins us and says hello. Doman 2000 says, now we need the classic mustard and ketchup color of the power supply cables. Well, that's the beauty of it. There's no window. No one will ever see them. Brian Madonna says hello. Olaf Ramler says something about the time. I'm not sure. Jim KJ3N says hello. Nick Poverman says, now if we could only install Windows 11 using 3.5-inch floppy disks and having the last one fail, so you have to start all over again. Hey, it didn't matter which one failed. You started all over again. Insert disk 5 of 19. Oh, can't read disk 5. Yeah. Good times. Emails. Check the emails. Let's do that right now. And as you can see here, we're all mounted and secured properly the right way. We've double checked all our I/O straps are not blocking any I/O, so we're safe to move forward without worrying about undoing work, causing a short, cutting corners, and creating problems, which, you know, that's good for business. Doug Betts says, Carey, you have my approval to announce on your current live stream that I will have a special unboxing of a mini PC that Doug is telling me just arrived that I sent him. You can give as much or as little detail as you care to, he continues, and I will follow your lead. Thanks again for your kindness and generosity, Doug. Well, thanks for the update, Doug. And yeah, check out Doug Betts' live Windows training with Doug Betts tomorrow. I will probably not be live tomorrow due to the construction. Maybe Sunday, not sure yet. Again, construction here's it's wrapped up for today now, but the only alternative I have, since there's not a set time construction ends, you know, whatever project is being worked on, they complete that particular part. They don't leave it half done. And then whatever that part is they complete, sometimes it's earlier they finish and sometimes it's later. So I don't know what time I would be able to go live if I'm waiting for those that work to finish so I don't have the background noise. Today it ended about a half an hour ago. So you probably noticed when the noise went away. Charlie Purdy sends an Amazon gift card. Quite a generous one at that. Wow, thank you so much, Charlie. You know, when Doug talks about my kindness and generosity, look at the kindness and generosity that's being shown to me, not only by Doug, but, you know, Doug has been a very kind and generous supporter as well. The least I can do is return the favor. And for Charlie, you know, I'm in your debt. I thank you so much for that. Very kind. You know, our our YouTube advertising is a joke. I can maybe fill a tank of gas with a week's worth of content. I can't live off of that. So the answer is to just start making commercials with corporations, which is what all the big channels basically do. I mean, there's no way you can afford to have any staff or editors, more or less, without taking on big sponsors. If you're going to be self-financed, especially when I have to buy all this equipment, it's coming through your support. And I want to thank folks like Charlie Purdy and Peter Laycock and Frankie B and Mark Gaines, because, and many others too, not just them, because they're basically underwriting the cost of these videos. In this case, every part we're using, we've purchased, except our good friend Tony at Silverstone was very kind to send us this case. So a shout out to and a thank you to Silverstone. But even when I buy the parts, you'll see this was a returned motherboard that I purchased to save some money, because I'm trying to make that money go further. I'm not just spending it willy-nilly on nonsense, because it's not mine, it's yours. And I consider it for the community, and I want to stretch that out and do as much as I can with it. So for that reason, I think it also more replicates what people at home do. If you can get a return board for cheaper, should you? Man, I've been doing that. I've had really good luck from Amazon. I know Gamers Nexus had an issue with getting damaged boards with damaged CPU sockets from Newegg and called them out on it. Even if the CPU socket was damaged, Amazon would take it back regardless. As long as I'm buying the returned product from Amazon warehouse, I have peace of mind. I have 30 days. Send it back for free for any reason, even if it's just because I changed my mind. No hassle. Newegg has been a little bit of a fight, apparently, according to some content creators. And I don't know, did they straighten up their act? I have no idea. So I guess the next thing we can do, just moving on with things, and again, a shout out and thank you to Charlie. Very generous. Let's get a power supply installed. Since I'm not going to put a graphics card in this, we're going to run off the onboard video of the Intel chip. If this is truly a home theater PC, there would be no justifiable reason to put a graphics card in here. It's overkill. It's like ridiculous, over the top, unnecessary expense and complexity for a home theater PC. Even a 14500 is over the top overkill for a home theater PC. But the beauty of it is the cost difference between, say, this 14500 and the cheapest socket 1700 chip and motherboard would amount to about $100 difference. So if it's $600 to build this versus $700, it's not that big of a percentage increase. The minute you throw a video card in it, you can forget any value. It just goes out the window. And if you're not using it, it's even more insulting. Just to add it because you have an empty slot to fill I don't have the financial means to justify that kind of a thought process. So we get what we need. We don't want to come up short. If we get a little more than we need, that just gives us room to grow if needed, especially if there's not much cost difference to just give us that extra buffer. I'm all for it. By saving money, by getting a return board, that justifies the extra cost of the CPU. Not that the CPU is that expensive to begin with. Just to squirrel here for a minute, if we go to Amazon and see what that CPU sells for today, because maybe the prices have changed. Let's go to my window capture, and let's look at a 14500 CPU. Yep, about the same, 240 bucks. That includes the cooler. That also has built-in graphics. So I know people that spend more than this for a liquid cooler. I know people that spend 8 times this for a graphics card. This has built-in graphics, and it comes with a cooler. Now, if you look at like the cheapest, I don't know, 14100, I think that's about as low as you can go. Cost difference is 150 bucks. But because of the 50 bucks I saved on the motherboard on top of, what else? I guess that's it, really. No, I take it back. That doesn't have video on it. That's an F, so that's too cheap. I knew that was too cheap. So it's about 50% less. It'd be like $239 for the i5 with graphics, $120, which is nearly exactly 50% of the 13100 for a Core i3, which only has 4 cores. That's it. Versus what we just bought, which doesn't even compare when it has 14 cores. See what I'm saying? Like for the extra 120 bucks. And then the price of the motherboard's the same regardless. Both chips use the same board. So we could have gotten maybe a smaller board, but wouldn't have saved us more than 30 bucks. And we already saved that anyway buying a return board. So yeah, leave it to your Uncle Carey to find the bargains without needing coupons or waiting in a big line where everybody else is all trying to get the same thing. Do what other people aren't doing. There's bargains out there being ignored. Are you ignoring them? All right, power supply. I only need a 500 watt power supply. This is another way we save money. We don't need a 750 watt, because when you add that graphics card, you're gonna probably need to add more power. All you're doing is adding to the expense of your system needlessly. Why do it? This is coming from somebody who has a very strong value to the dollar. I suppose if I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth, I wouldn't care if it was $1. It wouldn't matter. It would basically be free, and I could just freely spend money on unnecessary crap. But I don't think that is representative of the majority of people living today. Most of us are scraping by, and I feel better representing the majority than the 1%. So I'm glad I'm not in that category, because I wouldn't want to be there. I wouldn't want to say, well, look at how life is so easy for me. I don't know why you're having such a hard time, because I can't comprehend the struggle of living, you know, with a very limited budget to make ends meet and to still have a good quality of life. To have that disconnect, I think, would be a detriment to my ability to connect and relate with other people. So I'm not complaining about it. Now, over here, just to my side, I have an old DVD drive that's laying around that we can put that in here. Okay, and then that can go back in. And then below that, I've got my brand new EVGA 500 watt power supply. It's a $40 or $50 power supply. Although lately, with the shipping and tariffs and things and confusion, prices might be a little higher right now, but I don't think that's going to last very much longer. It'll just take a little while for things to catch up. With the fan facing the bottom here and the cables on the inside of the case, that'll be our orientation. I also have dust on this. Hold on a second. Let me get the dust off of here. Because silly Carey did not close the box, and so I live in a desert. Things get dusty awfully quick. Look at me. Oh wait, that's crusty. A little different. You might live on the East Coast, things get a little rusty. So it's dusty, rusty, or crusty. Can't win. So that's gonna fit in there super easy. There's no power supply shroud you've got to work around. You know, everything's super accessible. Typically, these EVGA power supplies, they come with screws that nobody knows where they are. And they're typically right under this lid that people throw this whole box away, and they don't realize there's a little bag stuck with a piece of cellophane tape, scotch tape. That's your power supply screws. Now, usually I'd say there's no difference between the screws that come with the case and the power supply screws. But for this case, that's beige. These black screws don't match the color. And we're all about aesthetic here. So don't tell me the color doesn't matter when you're going after a certain look. That's exactly what matters. So we're going to use the silver screws that come with the case instead of the ones that come with the power supply to match the silver on the back, and nothing stands out. Who's going to see the back? Who cares? It's not the point. If you're going after a look, do it right. If you don't want to do it right, I don't want to hear about it. And that's just laziness or an indifference of which goes as the antithesis of what I stand for. Now, if I look here with the screws that are included, I don't see the typical hex head screws that we use with power supplies. These regular flat screws will work fine to hold the power supply in, or only because I have a jar, a little ramekin jar that's here on the floor somewhere that has a bunch of spare screws, and I'll bet you I have a ton of those. Since I have them, I feel like I want to use them because they're old school. You know, they're the old style screws that the cases of this era used to use. A little disappointed that Silverstone didn't include our standard hex head screws, but it's a very minor little nitpick, if I'm honest. I realize, I hear myself, but this is what I'm talking about. These kind of screws right here. And I should easily have, oh look, I have a bag right here that came from another power supply that gave me silver screws, where I probably moaned about, why are they giving me silver screws and everything is black these days? So I put these in the ramekin and I black screws out for that build. But see how things come around again? Here we are. So extra parts saved the day. Not that anybody other than me would notice, but I don't really care if anybody's happy but me and my customer. Primarily my customer. But usually my demands are much higher than my customers. So if it passes my muster, there's a pretty good chance the client's not going to call me with any concerns of build quality or aesthetic. There's not going to be any scratches or dents on the case. I won't deliver it that way. Or if something happens and we're under a time crunch, I'll explain to the customer, hey, I can get it to you, but it's got a scratch or dent on it, and we can worry about replacing it later, or we can wait until the replacement comes in and let the customer decide. So I'll save the black screws for a future build, which I'm sure won't take very long. Since everything is normally black, we'll probably be using those in no time. And let me jump back over to the chat room. Let's see, jump out these screws. I like to save these little bags for spare screws, so I just stick that right down here in that drawer. You'll probably see that come out in some future video when I'm saving parts. Or they give you the screws in a bag you have to tear, and then you have no way to save the extra screws because it's not a resealable bag. So I save the resealable bags for that reason. You build enough computers, trust me, starts making sense. I could go on Amazon and buy a bunch of those bags, but I could also save them from the landfill and use them more than once, and it's better for my economics, and it's also better for my local ecology. I mean, it is going in the landfill eventually, but if I can get 2 or 3 uses out of a single-use plastic, I'm all for it. All right, we're going to get the screws put in here. And this is a great example of a lot of people, when they're putting the power supply in, they're not paying enough attention to the videos. These screws do not go in opposite corners. They're offset a little bit. So if you look closely at the location of the screws on the power supply, you'll see they're not all evenly spaced out. They are close to the corners. I don't know if we can get that over there. Let's see, move it this way. Gotta keep moving it. A little bit more. So if you look where those silver screws are, there are some in the corners and others offset about 1 inch from the corner. But the idea is that you've got 2 on the bottom, 2 on the top that are spaced apart as far as they can go, but not always to the edge. That's the proper way to mount a power supply. I've seen customers put 2 screws right up here and then nothing on this side at all. I don't know what they're thinking. Or they put 2 in on the top and nothing on the bottom. So that is the proper orientation. And it's those little attention to detail. It's not rocket science. You don't have to be super smart. All you got to do is pay attention. And then you don't have issues that can come from improperly mounted hardware, which often means the hardware is not secured properly. So when things get moved or jostled, things can break off. All right, I think at this point, I can start hooking I/O up to it. I mean, why not? We've got our USB 3 right here. It's going to go in this way. These cases didn't have cable management. You just sort of move the cable. And we could grab a zip tie. When we did that back in the day, just to fold it up and kind of get it out of the way. So it's very old school to do this. This is our USB 3.1. We never would have built a computer like this with a plug like that back in the day. That feels wrong, but in a good way. Should just click into place. There it goes. So that takes care of our front port USB. This is our front port audio. That's going to go just above the power supply in the corner closest to you. And there's a pin missing, so it can only go in one direction. Some motherboards, that pin is missing on the bottom row of pins. On other motherboards, depending on the orientation, the pin missing could be on the top row. So I just take a quick look. It looks like the pin missing on this one is on the top row. So turn it that direction. A lot of people will only put this on one row of pins, not realizing when they plugged it in, they completely missed one entire row. They feel it seat down, but they don't look closely enough to just look around and make sure there's no pin sticking out of the edges. That's how you know it's fit correctly. There's no sleeve that it fits into. There's no locking mechanism. It's just a friction fit. So while it does only go in one way, you can offset it by one row. So again, not rocket science. It's just at paying attention to the detail. Unless you like solving problems, then keep, not paying attention. I don't mind. I'm just trying to get it done right the first time to my best of ability, rather than trying to get it done quickly. I'm not in a race. Furthermore, if I'm enjoying an expensive dinner, I want to chew my food. I don't want to be in a hot dog eating contest if I'm interested in enjoying the flavors and textures. So yeah, if I've got an expensive meal or something I don't partake in very often, I want to savor it. In much the same way, I like to savor the building process because I like building. And I especially like it when I turn it on the first time and it works. It just simply works. So here's our big 24-pin power connector. And I will add that right now. And then we've got the small EPS CPU power connector. That's an 8-pin. That should be somewhere around here. Right here. And I'll route these a little neater later on, but again, primarily just for airflow purposes and for ease of working on it in the future. Nobody can see inside this when the cover's on. And finally, we have what? Just the umbilicals, right? The switches and LEDs. Those all go down here. So let's see. What do we have? This motherboard crams a bunch of connectors together. I see. Okay, so power switch is going to go right there. Power LED and hard drive LED are together on this case. The hard drive LED positive connector is the bottom row of pins with the words HDD LED facing down. You want that positive cable on the first pin on the bottom row, and the positive cable on the power LED on the first pin, starting from the left on the top row just above it. You do not connect the top and bottom rows. You're only connecting these connectors horizontally onto the same row. Never cross the rows. So let me just pull the other connectors off because now they're in my way. So probably best to start with the power LED, and I knew that, but I was trying to be different. Power LED, then the hard drive LED goes directly below it, positive below the other positive cable. They line right up, one above the other, on separate rows. Then we just have the power switch and the reset switch. The power switch goes right next to the two pins beside the power LED, and the reset switch goes on the two pins right beside the hard drive LED. It's very basic and simple, and all motherboards are the same in that way. They've been that way for years, decades. The rest of these we don't need for right now. If I want to add this optical drive, this would be the time to do it. Basically, we know that when we look at this, this curved area is what's going to face inward, and I do have some cables that are sticking up here. But that was a good reason to take this out. And I will not be able to secure, once this is secured in, I can't get to the screws on this side for the optical drive. So what I would do is just kind of hold it in place, because I need to know where to align this. There's 2 points of contact here for the optical drive to align, and I don't know, does it go in further or does it stick out further? So I suppose I can just kind of dry fit that here because if it's in too far, then it's not going to look right. And if it's out too far, then it's going to stick out all the time. So I'm not quite sure which one of those we need to use, but let me take a quick look here, see how I can push that door open if I'm too far ahead. Feels like maybe right about there. Let's see what holes that lines up with. Okay, so that's lining up with the, when it comes to these holes on the side, it's lining up with the one furthest away from the front. And that automatically aligns you then to the furthest at this edge as well. Now this is going to take these fine threaded screws, which I'm sure they've given us. They're pretty common, and it looks like we have a few to choose from here. These really shallow ones, they're not very deep. I would avoid those. That's primarily for solid state drives. I'd like something that has a little more length to it. So I think perhaps these right here. I could also use some of my standard spare fine thread screws as well. So let me just get this started here. Once you start the first one, there is room for 2 screws and then 1 screw, but I just put 1 screw on each side. Or I should say 2 screws, 1 in the front, 1 in the back on the left, 1 in the front, 1 in the back on the right. You could probably get away with half of that, but again, I've got the screws. I don't want to be lazy. And it's not like having too many is a problem. It just makes sure the drive is ultra secure, especially as people open and close the drive and the screws can loosen up. You've got twice as many screws now that would have to be loose for that drive to start wobbling or creating vibrational noise. What's happening, Mara?
You have an email and it's pretty funny.
I have a funny email?
Yeah.
All right. And we're going to get to that in just a second here. I don't know why I just didn't bring out the electric driver for this. I guess I just felt going old school. You can see those screws are pretty long. They're going in there, and you don't have to use them that long. It's just without any sort of description of where Silverstone intends for you to use those screws. I'm basing it on my past experience, and they don't give us those same kind of screws that we would typically use. They're just not in the packet. So this looks like about the closest thing to that, and that's why I picked it. But other screws that are fine thread would probably work as well, even if they're not as long. But then I don't know what the long ones would be for if that's the case. I know the short ones would be for like a SATA SSD, something like that. And I have a bunch of dust on this drive because, as you can imagine, it's been sitting on a shelf for quite a while. There's not much call for this anymore. But because we have a spot for it and we don't have anything else to do with it, seems like a good plan. And that means this support bracket can go back in. So we're going to put that on like this. Back goes that way somehow. So there's a hole here and there's a nub that sticks out so that you get this aligned perfectly. Otherwise, it may not work very well as a support, and it holds it in place for you while you're getting the screws, and you don't need an extra set of hands. All right, now we'll be lazy and get the electric driver. We'll pop those bad boys back in. Oh, come on. There's one. And then for this one, I got to go around back. Perfect. Now we can put this piece back in. That's going to sit right up here like so. And it's going to align right there. Now if I open this little drawer, I just want to make sure that my drive tray isn't too far back. Now I'm going to say that looks about perfect right there. And while there's no button to eject, you just right click on the D drive and choose eject. That's all. So we don't need to have a push button here. Close that out. And we have these final 4 screws. And then we just give this a SATA data cable and then power to it, and that's it. We're ready to fire up and we're good to go. With all the Windows updates installed, the latest BIOS is already in, Windows is activated. You should just fire up and we'll be done for the day. It's that easy. And you know, I've been rattling off here while I'm working. If I was alone, just working by myself at a normal pace, not worrying about camera angles and explaining grounding straps, I'd probably be done with this in 45 minutes or sooner. But it's not a race. And again, I highly encourage you to take your time and enjoy your build, because when it's done, if you did it right, it'll fire right up and you're going to say, gee, I would love to do that again sometime. But at $800 a pop, you know, it can be a little discouraging, if not financially impossible. And, you know, for most of us, what'll end up happening is we'll talk about the experience to friends and family who will say, hey, you think you'd build one for me? And before they finish the sentence, you're already on Amazon ordering parts. That's how much fun it can be. I'm sure there's many of you in the chat room who built one and have since built many more. Has anybody in the chat room ever just built one and has no desire to build again? I'm just curious, because I don't think that person exists. But at least not in our community. Maybe I'm wrong. Some of you might yet surprise me. I just want to put away these screws so I don't lose them. And I'm hoping in the motherboard box I have a SATA cable. If I was a good boy, I did get SATA cables with this motherboard and I kept them in the box. Any SATA cables will work, and I do have extras, but my preference is to use what came with the purchase. Right there, a couple of SATA cables. I only need one, and I like to use the right angle. You always get one that has a right angle on it, and I like to use that on the back of a DVD drive so that the connector isn't sticking out, and then if you're working on it and you hit your hand against it, you can break the connector off. So this idea that you can get that connector right angled down gets it out of the way, so that when I plug this in, I'm less likely to have an issue running into it with anything that could damage it. The only downside, I suppose, with this case design is with that cable running down, it's right over our power supply fan. So in a way, the straight one may be better off for this particular build rather than going down, so that we have just less chance of fan interference. So I think just because it's a unique case, we need to modify our typical routine for cabling to accommodate the old school way, and that'll keep that cable up way above our CPU fan. I don't know how well you're seeing that, but I think you get the idea. And then we can plug this into any of the SATA ports on the motherboard. It doesn't matter which one you use. My OCD likes to use SATA port 0 first. Doesn't really matter. This can go right over here just to get it out of the way. And then we just need power for the optical drive, which would be one of these. Any of these will work. Just pick one, as long as it's got the right connector and it's facing the right way. And also run all your cables underneath this support, or your lid's going to squish the cables down. It's not going to sit straight, and it could eat through the insulation, cause a short circuit, and then let the magic smoke out. And computers don't run if you let out the magic smoke. Now, we do have a number of cables very close to that CPU fan, and that's what I will use the cable ties, not for making it look pretty that nobody can see in it, but to ensure that those cables will not get jostled in a way that can cause them to fall into the fan and stop that fan from turning. So that's why we used cable ties in the 90s with systems that didn't have windows. We weren't there to make it look pretty. They were there to serve a functional purpose that made the system easier to work on and less prone to fan interference. The last thing, I suppose, is the this fan over here, which is just a standard, what, 3 or 4? It's a 3-pin fan. A little disappointed I didn't get a 4-pin fan, but yeah, it's fine. The 4-pin fans and the 3-pin fans plug into the same place. It's just the 4-pin fans have a little more control. They can come to a complete stop. A 3-pin fan really can't. So you get a little bit more control with the 4-pin fan. And that's more of a nerdy request than one that's necessarily practical. If you have a lot of fans and you're trying to quiet the machine down, that becomes more important. But for us today, this is fine. It's good enough, but I would have still liked the 4-pin fan even if I didn't need it. Now, where is this going to plug in? That's the question. This motherboard does have fan headers on it. I just don't know where they are. So give me a second here so I can look for anything that I might be able to use. They're probably underneath the optical drive I just put in, knowing my luck. No, those are ARGB headers. We're not using those. Usually next to the CPU fan. Where did I plug that in? Yep. So right next to the fan, we have a CPU optional. And this will be fine in that. It doesn't have to go into a chassis fan plug. It's fine. CPU optional will work. But the optical drive is a little bit in my way. I probably should have put the fan in first. So that's the only sort of issue with regards to difficulties working inside of this case, and that's my fault. I just didn't plan that ahead very well. Quite honestly, I forgot about the fan until just now, so I should have hooked that up. In fact, you know what? It takes 2 seconds to remove the optical drive rather than struggle. So let me just take it out real quick. And I don't have to unplug it. I just need to get it out of the way momentarily. And then that way I don't risk, cutting my hands or pulling cables out as I force my hand and I'm pushing things out of the way, and all kinds of chaos and consequences, all because I didn't want to spend. Oops, I didn't mean to take out the screw holding in the support bracket. That one needs to stay in, Carey. But this one is the one that needs to come out. There we go. Like, how do I get to 5 screws when there's only 4? So just temporarily take this out of the way. Now I have open access. And again, this will need to be cable managed. We have way too much cable here. And that loose cable can fall into the blades of the fan in the most inappropriate, inopportune times. Kind of a Murphy's Law thing. But for now, I think cable management's boring and I'm not going to show it on camera. There's also not much to see unless the camera's attached to my head. And then you'll get motion sick. And I just want to make sure the CPU fan is clear. Again, the zip ties will ensure that we take up all the slack so that there won't be any possible interference with the cables with the CPU fan, or now even the rear fan, potentially causing its own interference with its own cable. Does not feel right. That's better. Okay. And now we're ready to turn it on, basically. Once these screws are put in, we can fire it up for the very first time. 1, 2, 3, and 4 right here. These have recesses the screws go in. On this side, it's completely flat, so it's throwing me a little bit. It feels like the screws aren't going all the way in, like I've got them in crooked. So I just want to make sure that's just an optical illusion, and it is, because there's dimples on this side that the screws recess into, but there's no dimples on this side. I don't know why. Maybe because there's a ridge here, and when you put the lid on it, if the screws stick out too far, the lid won't close. The screws will interfere. So the rest of these will get cable managed. We can just throw them in there. In fact, just to get them out of the way for right now, let me just fold them up. How do I want to do that? Now, I will use a nylon zip tie when this is permanent, just because we're live and I want to go quickly. And I want these out of the way because they're just so chaotic and messy. I will use momentarily a wire tie to temporarily hold it. As a temporary thing, it's fine, but you don't want to leave metal wire ties in your case. They do get brittle over time and break, and then you have a piece of metal floating around in your computer. And if it winds up making contact with the back of the board or even the top of the board, it can short circuit. And that would be your fault. That would not be a warranty issue. There we go. And the lid can go on just like this now. Should slide on there like a glove. A little bit of a gap right there. I remember these days it was like closing a suitcase. You have to kind of put your elbows down on it. And now the seams are even on both sides. The last two screws right here. Uh-oh. Have I not aligned something? I guess I have to push down on it. So a little pressure down. There's one. And pressure down over here. You don't have to do that on modern cases, but this is not a modern design. I'm okay with that. It's very nostalgic for me. It's been a while since I've had to do that. Now we'll just give it power. And because this board is already prepped, we can give it network, which is down here somewhere. That's our HDMI cable. That'll go right here to the back of the board. And we need a keyboard and a mouse. These little plastic decorative pieces can go back on. One goes here. Not sure if they're different, if the left and right are different, or wasn't paying that much attention when I took them off. And it just clicks in. That's the bottom of our power supply. This is going to filter that air, which would go this way. There we go. There it is. Perfect. Finally, what I say, network. Here's our Ethernet cable and keyboard and a mouse right over here. Right here. Turn these on, grab my dongle just to see if our front ports are working. I'll plug the dongle in here, and likely I will not be able to close this door once the dongle is in there. It'll stick out too far. Yeah. So just bear that in mind. So for the sake of just making it look pretty, I'll plug the dongle in the back. And now it's time to power on. Right there's our power button. We got a green light right there. And then let's go over to the input to this, or the output rather, of this machine. And we're loading. In fact, let me put camera one back up for a second and put myself in a corner. That way we can see both at the same time. It's completely silent. I mean, it's not dead silent. I hear a fan very, very quietly. And we've got 3 fans running. We've got a CPU fan running, we've got a power supply fan running, and we've got the case fan running. It's very reasonable. I ran some tests on this last night in case you guys were curious what kind of numbers it was getting with just a raw motherboard without any additional cooling fans. So if I go to my full screen over here, and I bring up my crystal disk mark numbers, these are the speeds I'm getting off of the internal NVMe drive right here. I'm quite happy with that. These are the Cinebench results. Let me get rid of the camera. And you can see, just using the stock CPU fan that came with the 14500, our temps never got above 80, what does that say? 88, 89 degrees Celsius, which is a little bit warm, but on a stock fan, and it just hit that momentarily during part of the test. And then of course you can see the rest of our scores right over here on our multi-core and single-core CPU test on a 14500. It's very respectable. I mean, anybody that says that's not fast enough, come on, give me a break. So normally at this stage, you would be installing a new BIOS, installing your Windows, downloading your Windows updates, activating Windows, installing your drivers, not necessarily in that order. Speaking of which, if we look at our system properties, you can see we've got 32 gigs. There's our processor. There's our Windows 11 Pro in our version. If we look under MS Info, oh, I'm using the wrong keyboard. My apologies. Let me use the right keyboard. So let me come back over to my full screen over here. Come on, mousy mouse. There you go. MS Info. That'll bring up system information. We can make sure that Secure Boot is turned on and that we are in UEFI BIOS mode. And finally, we can take a look in our device manager, right-clicking on the Start menu and going to Device Manager. And we're able to identify everything in the device manager is happy. Everything's cool. This motherboard does not have Wi-Fi on it, but we could easily add Wi-Fi through USB, or we can add Wi-Fi through a PCIe card. And the motherboard may even have a spot for a laptop style. So I don't want Wi-Fi on it, but you could add it, or you could buy a motherboard that's already got it built in. Okay, and right at 2:58. You know, I was trying to end this at 3 o'clock or be done by 3, and I realize now that many of you might have been trying to talk to me while I've been preoccupied, and that includes checking my email. So let's check the email first.
Also, pretty unlike me, but I am tickled with this case.
Does the hard drive light blink? I wasn't even paying attention. That hard drive light should be blinking off and on when I, hold on. Let me go back for a second and run a crisp. What can I do? Let's just do a restart and see if the hard drive light blinks. How about that? Start. Shut down. Start. We'll go to camera 1. Should see a flashing red. Oh, the power light blinks? Is that our? No, that can't be right. Oh, it's lighting up. It's very dim. That's the problem. For some reason, you can see the hard drive light blinking on and off right there. It's just not as bright as the green light beside it. Ha! That's fun. Then I'm sure it's already loaded. Yeah, it's fast. Okay, back to email. Let's see. Our friend Mark Gaines with a PayPal super chat, or those are two different things. With a PayPal contribution, sends $63.59. Thank you, Mark. Our friend Barry Klein sends an Amazon gift card. Barry says, here's some money that you can use to purchase a bedazzler to deck out your next build. Gaudy but unique. If that does not appeal to you, and God, I hope it doesn't, then feel free to add this to the channel equipment fund, and there's a $100 Amazon gift card. Thank you, Barry. I think that'll just about pay for the bedazzler. We'll get some denim. We'll cover it in bedazzled denim. Gonna go for the cowboy build. Cow patties sold separately. Let me get over to the chat room now and see what everybody's got going on here. Bill Stott, I guess, is facing an incoming storm, so stay safe. Stay indoors. You know, whatever you got to do can wait if it requires going anywhere. Not worth getting in the traffic and the weather, and people don't know how to drive, and trees fall down, and yeah, hope your plans are to stay home till the storm passes. That's my advice. Enjoy the sound of the storm without fearing it. Let's see, what else do we have here? Barry Klein says, I like this case. It takes me back. Yeah, it's pretty simple, you know, and I'm a big fan of simple, generally speaking. You notice my RGB? No? You're welcome. Think of the money we saved and the hassle. No RGB software, no cable management, no worry about LEDs not lighting up. Ugh, so done with it. Next, we're putting hubcaps on our lawnmowers. Let's do that next. Hubcaps for lawnmowers. Get your hubcaps for lawnmowers. You want to spend extra money? I'll get you some spinners. Nick Poverman said, make sure nobody's on the phone so you can get on the internet. Oh. Turn call waiting off too. So annoying to lose the connection because somebody's calling. Working my way backwards through the chat here, so a lot's been. I love seeing the community engaging, and I'm just kind of catching up with your prior discussions. I don't know how long ago they took place, but they're relatively close to the bottom, and I'm working my way up from the bottom, so I'm seeing the conversations backwards. Phil Stodd said looking at that little ramekin of screws was giving him a hankering for custard. Creme brulee, please. One creme brulee. I don't think I've missed anything. If you have any questions I've missed, go ahead and repost them, but I don't see anything else. This is sort of the wrap up here. We've completed, so the only thing that may not be complete is any questions or comments you have for me during today's live show. If you're not watching the show live, of course, you can leave a comment below the video or join us in our forums at CareyHolzman.boards.net, the link for which is in the video notes below today's video. The link for this build for this case is in the video notes. It's a little difficult to find the case. It should be about $149 in the US if you can find one. As for the motherboard prep, I don't think we've got the link to that video, but I'll look for it because we prepped the board a couple months ago. And I don't know if I did it here or at Studio B, but the board has remained untouched since that prep. So it'd probably be good if we tie those two, that video and the link for the case together for anybody that's interested in revisiting that or has never seen it. We also have our links to SCD keys, which is where I go to get my legal license keys for Windows 10, 11, and Office products. Although SCD Keys sells licenses to all different kinds of software, I can't say anything about that because I don't know. I don't buy it. But I do know they offer great support for 6 months, up to 6 months after the purchase. And with the coupon code of Carey, you get an additional 30% off their already good prices. They're very attractive prices. $22 for a Windows 10 license is a good price, but $15.72 after 30% off is an even better price. And those Windows 10 Pro keys, at least until the end of Windows 10 support in October, they work to activate Windows 11 Pro no differently. Windows 11 Pro keys are a few dollars more. Why would I spend a few dollars more if the key does the exact same thing? You can buy a Windows 11 Pro key if you want. I won't stop you. I don't make commission on the sales. I'm just telling you, you can save a few bucks, get that Windows 10 Pro key. You don't have to install Windows 10 Pro. You just plug the Windows 10 Pro key as though it were a Windows 11 Pro key into Windows 11, and it works exactly the same. So the only difference is about $3. Microsoft may turn off that free upgrade, which they're free to do at any time. They usually do that after the end of the operating system's life. So in Windows 10, that's October 14th of 2025. If that upgrade continues after that, that'll be icing on the cake. I don't anticipate it's going to go away before that. Microsoft wants people to get into Windows 11, and they're making it as convenient as possible by reusing your current Windows 10 key for a free upgrade to Windows 11. But if you let that ride and you ignore it, it's just a matter of time before Microsoft says, okay, now you've waited too long, and if you want Windows 11, now you got to pay for it. And if you got to pay for it, still go to SED keys, because they're 10% of what Microsoft wants. Microsoft wants 90% more for a license key for Windows and Office than SED keys. And they're the same license. They're identical. They're legal. They're legit. Why is there such a big price discrepancy? I wonder. Knowledge is power. So you can use that to your benefit, or just pay more money and don't educate yourself. You got the money, you don't have to be smart. You can pay other people to be smart for you. Photo Mix Media has a question about shipping computers with graphics. I don't ship computers with graphics cards. We started having some issues with those cards becoming damaged in shipping, and so we stopped doing it. So if you're asking me a question from a few years ago about how things were done, they're shown on camera. It was done exactly as I showed on camera at that time. I don't know what else I can, maybe I'm misunderstanding the question. I'm not even sure why you're even asking the question. The last few that I shipped, I ended up putting the graphics card basically in the machine and wired up. And then I put the graphics card back in the graphics card box and did all the cable management so that when the customer received it, they were instructed and agreed upon before we even engaged in a transaction that they were going to get the graphics card and plug it in. And I would already have the cable management ready for them. They just plug it in and screw it down. If they didn't want to do that, then they could provide their own graphics card. That's where we sit today. If somebody wants a gaming PC, I'll build it for them, but I will not sell them the graphics card. Absolutely not. There's too many reliability problems, too many warranty concerns, and it's too expensive and it's too likely to be damaged. So I don't even ship it separately. Now the rule is I'll make sure you have a good enough power supply. I'll make sure you've got a good enough processor and RAM. And all you have to do is source your own GPU. And if you have any problems with it, you deal with whoever you bought the GPU from. I don't want a part of it. Gamers are nothing but a thorn in my side. I'm sorry to say. They are cheap. They don't want to spend any money. They are very difficult to please. They are demanding. And I don't have time to coddle people. Now, I'm not saying every gamer is that way, but there's enough of it that I'm done with that side of the business. It's too much hassle, and they don't want to pay extra for that. If I'm paid extra for the hassle and the coddling, I'll do it. But they want the cheapest price, and they want it all yesterday. And every time they have a driver issue, they think there's something wrong with the computer. They overclock their graphics cards, they burn them up, then they want to send it in for warranty. I'm not dealing with that anymore. So for that reason, when it comes to gaming PCs, I'm not really interested in the gaming PC business. It's a very difficult way to earn a buck, and those people will just not leave you alone. They'll be getting calls for support from now to the end of time. And it's just not the normal way a PC transaction goes. I'm trying to stay in business. I don't owe anybody anything. And if they want to pay me the equivalent of that kind of service, I'd be open to it. But if they want to pay the same low prices, I cannot give them that kind of handheld tutoring enclosed with the price that they expect. And then when you tell them no, when they say, oh, that's fine, and then they do it anyway, and you go, look, we already agreed on this, then they get pissed off, and then they want to leave negative reviews because they didn't get what they wanted, and they want to change the rules. Regular customers don't normally do that, but gaming customers, it's all too often and too frequent. Again, they all don't do it, but enough of them make it happen so regularly that I don't want that business anymore. Every computer I build can be a gaming PC. Just depends on what graphics card you put in it. And I'll let you handle that with somebody else. Have fun. Photo Mixed Media offering help with camera lighting, color balance. I'm not a cinematographer, and I'm not making videos on how to be a cinematographer. The skills involved in photography and cinematography are a different skill set that, unless you're doing it constantly every day all the time, I don't pretend to even come close to. If you find that the lighting or colors of my videos are not to your standard, you're welcome to watch somebody else's videos. That's not what I'm here for. My videos are educational, and they're here to teach you about computers, diagnosing, repairing, upgrading, the latest in tech, and I'm trying to give it to you in the best resolution and lighting that I am capable of, provided the equipment's abilities and my abilities. I won't spend any more time on it unless people are willing to pay extra for that. If you're the only one that cares, it's not really my concern. If I'm hearing from a lot of people that there's something wrong with the video, it doesn't look right, it's blurry, or it doesn't sound clear, that interferes with my ability to teach. But the shade of blue has no impact on my ability to teach. So as far as I'm concerned, well, I appreciate your offer. We're not here making cinematographic film. It's not why we exist. And if I was that interested, I could just go on YouTube and watch some videos on lighting and color. Honestly, it's not what we're about here. So long as the lessons are conveyed accurately and clearly, that's all we need. Now, if we're teaching people how to do proper lighting and color correction, that would be more important to get that right. But as long as we're in the ballpark, that's not why we're, that's close enough, because that's not the subject matter of the video, right? This desk may be better aligned or maybe wider. There's lots of ways we could change the texture of the wall. That's not what this channel is about. So let's try and keep it on track so that you have proper expectations. But yes, if the video is not processing correctly, if it's blurry, if it interferes with my ability to do demonstrations so that it's not clear in both video and audio, then that has to be corrected. So you're the only one I've ever heard say anything about the color or lighting of the video. So it doesn't seem to bother anybody else. I think it looks great. What do you guys think? Do you think I need to spend more time on lighting and color correction? Because I could spend time off camera not making content, just monkeying around with that for a few days. Let me know your thoughts. Sincerely, I'm curious. I appreciate the offer, I just don't think it applies to us, but let me see what other people have to say. Peter VZ with a €1 super chat. Thank you, Peter. Brian says, why is the case so hard to find in the United States? I don't know. I do not know. I think if you just look for FLP01 on a Google search, you will find numerous sellers selling it, but they're going to be from companies you probably never heard of. I think there's a few companies in the San Francisco area that have it in stock. And I don't know if we're at the tail end of this product line. So I really don't know. John Williams said, I think your video looks and sounds fine and your content and instruction are great. I appreciate the feedback. Charlie Purdy said, that's a great build. It reminds me of my first build many years ago with a 286 AT. Yeah. Rick Lake said the video looks fine to him. Mark Baggett said the video looks fine. The lighting's creating shadows. Yeah, we are going to get some shadows here. The only way to solve that would be to add lighting against this wall, which I could do, but to be honest, I can't be bothered because we've got so much equipment laying around and we haven't got things organized that if watching a video with shadows bothers you, I would suggest you don't watch the videos. Because if that's what you're paying attention to, you're not here for the right reason. I'm here to show you. Your focus needs to be on this. There was nothing more frustrating than being in Studio A and having people tell me the microwave oven clock was off by a minute from the oven clock. Like, what are you doing? I'm over here teaching and you're looking over here out the windows like, you're missing the point of the video. If the shadows are distracting and it's interfering with your ability to understand what I'm conveying, and I'm finding that you're not alone in that, it's something I definitely will prioritize. But shadows, did you go walk outside and say, well, you know what, I've got a shadow now, so I guess I'm going to stay indoors with it? I don't understand what the problem is. Just spit. Why is a shadow a bad thing? Maybe you think I'm AI. Well, that's pretty good AI if it's casting a shadow. A little more convincing that I'm real. You might just appreciate the value of shadows in the future. Mara says the case can be found at micro centers. Also, we don't have micro centers here in Arizona, but they seem to be expanding now. Did my spit come out nice and clear in 4K? Should I have better lit that? Jason Lewis, hey, there's Planet Cryos. He said it looks good from here. So again, I do appreciate the offer, but it's not a priority for me. All right, I was gonna do one other, I was gonna test the optical drive. So let's do this. Let's put camera 1 in a corner here, and I'll show you, since we don't have an eject button, how would we use the optical drive? So what I'll do is simply go to the My Computer icon or the yellow folder. It helps if I use the right mouse though. And then if I want to use the optical drive, I simply right click and choose eject. Well, my video's a little in the way, isn't it? Let's move the video down. Go down here. No, I'm still not happy with that. Let's go just a little smaller. Okay, so I'm going to go over here and choose eject, which is right here, and then right there. You put your disk in and just give it a little push, or you can choose eject again. So if I right click and choose eject, and you don't like pushing the drawer in for some reason, you think that's harmful, it isn't, but it's just easier to accommodate some people than to train them. So you just right click and choose eject again. I think? No? Aw. It used to work. It used to be a thing. So yeah, you will have no choice because I don't think you can access. You can get a finger in there and hit the button, but the drawers are designed to be push closed. It doesn't hurt anything. It's not damaging anything. Just don't shove it all the way in. Just give it a little push and it'll take that inertia and move on its own. And you don't even have to have that much inertia. If you notice the way I do it, and I don't even know who I'm telling this to, quite frankly, because I don't even know who uses DVDs anymore. One or two of you, I suppose. But if we eject this, all I'm doing with my finger here is I'm just giving it a little push forward. That's it. Just get it moving. Don't push it in so hard like you've got to carry the inertia forward. Just enough to activate the motor. Once the motor picks up, let the motor carry it. But that's how you can use the optical drive without the eject button being visible. So if we go to full screen on camera 1, I think how I would do this. Camera 1. And then if I'm temporarily on camera 3, and I choose eject, right click. See, now it's too small and I can't see it. Put this right over eject. I'm going to leave the mouse right there. Then I'm going to go over to camera 1, and then I'll tap the mouse. That way you have a better view of just how that works. Pretty darn clever. As for the front USB, we can check and make sure those are working. So I'll just grab my utilities flash drive. We'll pop it in here, just like so. And then if we go over to camera 3, there is my flash drive right there. Pretty solid build if you ask me. Old school, that's the way to go. And look at all the expansion ports we have available coming around the front. Coming around the back. We're not even using any of those. So there's room for items to be added if you wanted to. It's good old school roomy case that didn't have the problems of heat issues, and it didn't have the problems of cable management. It didn't have all these problems we have voluntarily introduced to ourselves by adding more money and corporations figuring out clever ways to get you to part from your money and convince you that that's a good idea for completely unnecessary things. A lot of liquid cooler usage is completely unnecessary, and the performance gains from XMP and spending extra for RAM that goes a little bit faster in the practical world make maybe a 5 to 8% difference. And when you're already doing 5,000 gigahertz, getting an extra 5 or 8%, who cares? Back in the 286, 386, and 486 days, when you were running 33 megahertz, not 3,300, not 33,000, when you were running 33 and you could get 8% more, that was significant. 8% of 33 added onto 33 is a worthwhile benefit, but 8% more. But think about it with money. If you have 50 cents and I say to you, I can give you 10 cents more, 60 cents, you know, that's what, 5%? If we would, hold on a minute, 10 cents of 50 cents would be 20%. So 20% of, trying to make sure I'm getting this math right. 10% of 50 cents would be a nickel. So let's use $1. If I give you 10% on top of your dollar, you get $1.10. Okay? And let's say you've got that dollar in the bank. And let's just pretend in a wonderful world you could be getting 10% interest on that every month. Not likely, but let's just pretend. So you get $1.10, and then you'd get 11 cents the next month, and 12 cents and 13 cents, because then you're going 10% of $1.13, $14, $15, right? You see what I'm getting at? And after a year, after 10 months, even if there was no interest, even if it was just 10% flat, 10 cents a month after 10 months is 100%. It's pretty good. Now let's take, for example, so you're taking $1 and you're doubling it to, let's say, $2. Let's say you've got $5,000 and you're just getting 10% of 5,000. The overall amount of money you've got is a little bit more, a little tiny bit more. And of course, you can pick any number you want. If you keep going 10% and 10%, 10%, you eventually get to 100% in 10 months, right? If you're doing it monthly. In which case, hey, it adds up. But if you're only getting the 10% once, and you're already at $5,000, and you're just going to get 10% more after having that in there for, let's say, a whole year, was it worth keeping it there for that little bit in return? If it's a smaller amount, you will appreciate every little penny, any little addition, because you've got so little, anything, even a penny or two, makes a difference. But when you've got thousands, adding pennies, who cares? And so that's what's happened, is when overclocking and these things were doubling and you know, making a 50% difference in our performance, it was a worthwhile cause. But now the CPUs, they overclock themselves. XMP, very little benefit for most people. It's mostly benchmark chasers. And you know, if you're using integrated graphics on an AMD system, XMP can benefit your frame rates. But if you're a gamer, what are you doing? You know, you should have a proper graphics card. But if it convinces you, if the marketing is so strong that it has persuaded you to spend, in my opinion, wasted money on RGB lighting and liquid coolers that are not necessary, so you can pursue benchmark dreams that you believe to be true when they could be absolutely lying to you, then far be it for me to get in the way of your happiness. But if you want to spend the money pragmatically and you want to be smart with your purchase, then you do what actually benefits the computer. If you want to buy a lamp, buy a lamp. If you want to buy a heater, go buy a heater. If you want a computer, I presume you want a computer. That's what this is. This is a real computer. It is not a toy. This is a tool. And listen, if you want to paint your wrenches with nail polish, If you go down with a mechanic at a dealership and you notice somebody has hand painted and like it's a little action figure for a Dungeons and Dragons game, hey, that's on them. But most of us are too busy actually working to entertain a waste of time and paints and patience for tools that are designed to do a job. They're not designed to be showcases. Now, if you want to put your tools in a museum where people can go look at them and appreciate your artwork, fantastic. If you're a sculptor and you take tools and you weld them into figures, that's awesome. But if you're welding the tools you need into figurines, then it limits the ability of the tool to perform, and you're wasting time and money on things that don't make any practical difference in the world. But if it makes you happy, don't let me get in your way. But this is what I see happening to computers. I see all of this unnecessary hardware and complexity being added to systems where it improves nothing in performance, security, or reliability, and all it's doing is draining your wallet. And the manufacturers want you to do that. So you can defend that. And the manufacturers are going to take your side. They absolutely want you to think that way. I'm trying to run a business of offering value to my clients. And if my clients are serious clients and they need a machine that's reliable to do work that involves their livelihood and offering services or products to their customers, they don't ask for any of this crap. So for me, I'm just a bit old for TikTok, all right? This is like TikTok stuff, in my opinion. It's kid stuff. It's stuff that, yes, we do have some RGB machines here that we build, but that's only to appeal to the audience that's demanding it. And they're demanding it because the marketing efforts from the manufacturers have these high profit items they want to absolutely convince you need to have. You know, in the 70s, pet rocks were real popular. A guy literally sold rocks. A rock you could go outside and pick up. No, this one was in a box. It was in a little crate with air holes. I think it had googly eyes. And they were selling them out. And then some point people woke up and said, when did we all become so stupid? And then that product faded away. Well, mark my words, outside of the enthusiast market, RGB and glass panels and computer cases is going away. We are now getting to the point where that's becoming disco. It was cool for a while, and now we're starting to see an extreme opposite to that. You may not be there yet. It's probably coming. And if you're going to hold on to it, well, you might end up being like Disco Stu, still living in the past. But I already see the end is coming. Like the amount of RGB being drawn back now, where it's more subtle, is the beginning of the end of the RGB going away, or at the very least being significantly minimized. And I think part of this also has to do with the economy, where people don't have as much expendable cash to just waste on nonsense. But that's all just my theory at this point. I'm happy to see the return of regular computers designed to work as a functional tool. I'm happy to see lamps designed to work as a lamp. And I'm happy to not have to be a plumber to install a cooling system on a desktop computer. But that's just me. But mark my words, RGB is fading. You give it a few more years and it'll feel like the 1970s disco era. And it'll be embarrassing, like an old high school yearbook photo. I've said it before and I'll say it again. The only reason I do RGB here when I do it is because a client specifically wants to pay extra for that nonsense. Or like on the streaming computer, I know it's on screen, well, it used to be. And that attracts viewers who see the thumbnail. And they go, ooh, what is that? It's shiny. Okay, if that's what it takes to attract new viewers, I'm happy to do that. But for my own personal rig, I don't own a computer that I use that has RGB. Other than the streamer, I wouldn't waste my money. So when business clients call me, they don't want liquid coolers, they don't want RGB, they don't want XMP, or they don't want any of that. They're not going to pay extra for it. They're trying to get as many computers as they can, in most cases, for a certain amount of budget. So we can't exceed budgetary requirements and reduce the number of computers because we want them to look prettier. You're going to work. You're paid to work. Sit down at your desk and do your job. Don't be staring at your RGB all day. Company's not paying you for that. What you do at home is your business. So that's the attitude I encounter every day in my life to sustain my business that enables me and affords me the opportunity to share that business with you on camera. And when viewers insist on being home users with no consideration of the world around them that they rely on for their electricity, for their groceries, for their vehicle, for everything in their life they couldn't live without, all happens because of business. So for them to think that their RGB is more important than all those business services they rely on because they don't have a job, I guess, the rest of us do. And so that, for me, sits higher with regards to serious consideration than the wants and whims of a home user that's not answering to anybody and has funds that are not being accounted for by an accounting department. You spend your money willy-nilly on anything you want, including pet rocks. But that doesn't mean that's what I'm going to sit here and show you. It's not what I do. So just know what to expect when you tune in here. I'm going to show you real practical tech advice because there's just not enough of it on YouTube. It's just a lot of enthusiasts, which is fine if that's what you want. But there's a more serious side that actually makes the wheels go around for all the services you use in your life. They all use computers. And I guarantee you, you won't see any of those businesses you go to, real estate agents, banks, everything you rely on, the grocery store, none of those computers have RGB or liquid cooling, man. They don't have it because it's an unnecessary expense that's more or less for the home user. And home users are fickle. What they like today, they won't like tomorrow. Very difficult customers. And they're not frequent customers. You get a home user once in a while, but businesses need constant help. Home users don't want to spend any money. Businesses have to spend money to make money. So understand that if more YouTube videos that were showing tech were demonstrating the actual way the world works around you, there'd be far less of the RGB and liquid cooling and overclocking, because it's just really, with a few exceptions, it's mostly just the avenue of the enthusiast and a home user, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just, it's not a balanced level of information being provided to you through social media. And I'm here to try and offset that a little bit. I'd love to see more working technicians making videos. I'd like to see more working mechanics show you how to fix a car versus a guy that just makes videos on TikTok showing you little tips and tricks he's learned. He's not working on customer cars. He's working on his own car. It's very different. You work on an ambulance or a fire truck, and then that ambulance or fire truck breaks down in the process of trying to rescue somebody. It's not so fun anymore. And the amount of money and the amount of stress goes up because of how critical your job is, which is why you're getting paid. So the RGB on a fire truck exists to alert people and make awareness, raise awareness, to clear the way, get out of the way. But if that fire truck breaks down, it costs people their lives. So it's important we use the right tools. It's important that we earn our living properly, that we're not stealing from anybody or living off somebody else's wallet, that we're providing our own way through the world, and we're held accountable and responsible for the work that we do. So when I hear an actual mechanic give actual repair advice, that's much more valuable to me than somebody sitting in their garage working on their car. That doesn't mean that their advice isn't valid, but without having a customer to answer to and without having any accountability, you've got to keep that in mind when I'm hearing advice coming from enthusiasts. It may be good advice, it may not be. It's hard to tell when the only one judging you is you. When you have customers judging you, there's a different scale. Just be aware of that and decide for yourself which is more appropriate for the information you get online. Where is it coming from? What makes this person worth listening to? For me, I want to see some pedigree. I don't know that I want open heart surgery from somebody who's never done it before. But maybe that's just me getting old. I don't know what the problem is. I watched a YouTube video on it. I can do it myself. Got an X-Acto knife box cutter that'll do the job. Some Band-Aids and some staples. Need to go to a hospital for that. Crazy world. All right, ramble, I know. Mark Leibowitz wants to know what operating system does a Pet Rock run? I think it's Commodore Pet. Barry Klein says, Mara, please don't find one of these cases in stock somewhere. I have my credit card warming up in the bullpen. I'm sorry, Barry. Sorry, I'm not sorry. John Williams says he sees an FLP01 on eBay. Just type in FLP01 on Google and hit the shopping tab. There are places that sell them. It should be $149. That's all I can tell you. If you want to spend more than that, I won't stop you. But I don't think you'll find it for anything less than that. I suppose these extra screws and this, I don't know, is this any documentation? Not really. This is just warranty information on a case. I don't need that. I'll save the screws and I will use the zip ties. You can never have enough zip ties. I'll do the cable management maybe later tonight. Oh, and I've got those little rubber grommets, which absolutely you need to save, but I don't need them in a bag this big. So that can go, and I'll just reuse the little bag here just to put the little, in fact, you know what? I don't know why the rubber grommets just don't go in with the screws anyway, why they were separated. And that way, I have a spare resealable tiny bag for other projects that I have spare screws. This I can throw in the trash. These I will use later tonight, along with some more. That's not going to be enough. This will go in a drawer. We're good to go. All done today. Listen, what a fun build. I really enjoyed it, and I enjoy having you guys hang out with me. Just trying to give you some ideas, do things a little differently than you find on most other YouTube channels, and always offering you the perspective of a business side of things. Speaking of that, I'm just realizing as I look through the holes, these vent holes, I see RGB on that RAM. It's pointless because you can't see it. So I might switch the RAM out for non-RGB RAM, only because there's probably a windowed case here somewhere that has non-RGB RAM, and I need to switch them around so that I put the RGB in a system that it can be seen. If you can't see it, what's the point of having it? If you can see it, what's the point? In any event, yeah, that's about the only thing I would change. So cable management, switch the RAM out, and rock solid, good to go. And this thing sits on a desk. To the average viewer, they think, oh my gosh, how old is that? I built it yesterday. Really? Is it like an old 286? Nope, it's a 14500, 14th gen Intel. What? Yeah, terabyte Gen 4 storage. What? Love it. Keep them guessing. Don't do what everybody else does. Fun in that. John Williams said, I have the previous version of this case in black. I think it's the current version. The Silverstone HTPC has always been a thing. They just did a funny front on it for an April Fool's Day joke. But they never stopped selling it, as far as I know, in its original form. This was just an additional modification that gained a little momentum as a joke to become an actual product. I kind of love it. That is so awesome. Bajin guy wants to know, how long do you think this RGB fad will last since you think it's going away? Just want to know your thoughts. I think by the year 2030, you won't even see it. Or it'll just be the thing of enthusiasts. I think a lot of PC building is going away as well as we go to more mini PCs. If think about it this way, and just using very logical common sense. If home consumers are pretty much not buying computers anymore, not like they used to, because they're able to do everything they need to do on their phones, which is the reason I'm seeing a significant drop in any consumer-based calls, and I'm happy for it, by the way. Good riddance. then this trend will likely continue until basically only the enthusiasts will have computers at home. Businesses have been consistent in what they want. If you look at the computers Dell and HP sell, most of them do not have any RGB, nor have they ever. Those computers that businesses are buying from Lenovo and other respected manufacturers are buying computers by the thousands, and they're buying them yearly. They have a yearly budget. They're selling over 300 million computers a year. How many of those do you think have RGB? And I mean combined sales for all over the world, for businesses and consumers alike. You're always going to have your Alienwares and stuff like that, right? But those represent a very tiny percentage of overall sales for Dell. Look it up. It's just not a thing that's gaining any momentum. They're losing momentum. As video cards get more expensive, gamers are moving more to consoles. Consoles are just now PCs. An Xbox is just a PC. PlayStation, basically just a computer. So they just put it in a little console box and locked it down, and now the end user just has to plug it in, and we removed all the complexity. So I would anticipate, with the ongoing degradation of interest from consumers for large desktop computers when they can get away with just a little phone, that's going to escalate and continue forward, I do believe. Also, with the introduction of many computers offering far more performance, RAM, storage, less power consumption, less cost to run, less desk space. No need to upgrade them anymore. This is not the old days where you're keeping up. Now, you're still catching up likely with a computer you bought 4 or 5 years ago, maybe even 8 years ago, that still performs just fine today. So the reasoning that we had 20 years ago or 30 years ago, 40 years ago, of constantly playing catch up, it's the other way around now. Now we're waiting on software to catch up. Now we're worried about security issues that we never had to worry about before the internet. And all it's doing is attracting more thieves the easier we make it for them, which now requires some upgrades for security reasons that people will dismiss, home users dismiss. What companies do, and you'll see this often, is a company will quite often, when this happens, it's a very similar pattern, where a company doesn't want to spend the money to update their security. And this includes city, municipality, government type computers, hospital computers, and then, everyday shops, everyday businesses. They're told by the IT department, the person who runs it, we need X amount of dollars to upgrade our equipment. The bosses say, no, we're not spending the money. We don't have it in the budget. Then they get hacked. And let's say that budget was initially, we need $300,000 to upgrade all of the server equipment to protect us from all of the bad actors online, and the company's never been hacked, and they say, $300,000 is a lot of money, we don't have it. But then they get hacked. Now it's going to cost the same $300,000, but now there's remediation and legal costs. It's going to take that to $3 million. Significant, and that's not an exaggeration. And they always have the $3 million, always. Because if they don't have a business. I'm okay with that. I don't care if a company wants to wait until something happens and pay 10 times more. Pretty common. And by the way, while they're spending the $3 million, their business is down. They're not generating any money. So not only are they spending $3 million, but now they're not making any money at the same time. So what's your total loss before everything gets up and running? And this is not isolated to large businesses. Small businesses that ignore the security and home users that ignore security. Just give it time. You think you can outsmart the hackers? You're doing good so far? You think you can keep that up? I don't care. Because when it happens, you likely will never tell anybody. But when it happens to a business, and especially if it's a public business where there are investors, they must disclose by law. You don't have to. So you can fool yourself all day, no differently than the CEOs do. But the CEOs will be called to task for it, and they will pay the money. You will also be called to task for it, and you will pay the money. You'll deal with it. The difference is, will anybody know? I don't care. But the reasons we upgrade today, the reasons we go to more advanced computers, isn't necessarily because, it's faster. It's because of the security settings, like the requirements for Windows 11. It's not a joke. It's not there so Microsoft can just be mean. The fact that people can't process this and they're blaming Microsoft is the problem when you're giving computers to people that shouldn't have computers because they made it so you click on a pretty picture. Back in the early days of computers, if you didn't understand how computers worked, you could not operate one. Today, you just click on the pretty picture, and this has created an environment of end users who have no understanding or education with how technology works, and therefore they just dismiss it out of ignorance until they're affected. And because they're not publicly, forced by law to disclose it, when it happens, they usually don't tell anybody. So a lot of this goes unreported. And if you want to take that risk in your life, you can. And if a CEO of a company wants to take that risk with his company, or their board of directors makes that decision, that's their bed to lie in. I'm just here to help people avoid that. But if I have to twist your arm to get you to not walk in frickin' traffic, I walk in traffic all the time, never been hit by a car. Well, then keep doing it. I don't care. Gen X, you do what you want. But we can avoid a lot of headache with just a little preventive measure. Those companies could spend 300 grand and avoid the downtime and the embarrassment and save $2.7 million plus all the lost revenue and income. But around the wheel goes. Just go to bleepingcomputer.com. Every day there's another one, and it's just growing and getting worse. All that denial can take you so far. Give it enough time, it's coming. So consumers are much safer using their phones and their tablets. Android, iOS, these were developed to be online. Windows wasn't. So Microsoft, while maintaining backward compatibility, kind of opens them up to a vulnerability in this old tech that they're still maintaining backwards compatibility, because if they didn't, then everybody would whine crying. So basically, home computers are going away. They've been going away since the pandemic. Phones and tablets have mostly taken their place. And for people that still want computers at home, mini PCs are starting to replace these large desktop towers because they're much better value and they cost less money in electricity to run, and they're more convenient. They're just not in the way, they're not as heavy, they don't take up as much space. And in businesses, nothing will change. Nothing has changed. And there'll still be another 300 million computers sold next year, with more and more going to businesses and fewer going to consumers. And as that trend happens, so does the RGB go away. You don't really see phones with RGB. They've tried it a couple times, but why would you want to eat up your battery like that? It hasn't really stuck. And it's a fad. It can only go one direction. There's nothing that lasts forever. And these fads are less and less time that they're existing. What used to be a 30-year fad has now become a 15-year fad. And what was a 15-year fad is now like an 8-year. Everybody talks about, at one point, Cabbage Patch Dolls and Beanie Babies. What happened? It's not like a switch flipped off. It just faded out until you stop thinking about it. And if you ask, what day in what year did you stop thinking about it? It's really hard to pinpoint it because it's not the same for everybody until it's all the same for everybody. We're universally just not thinking about it. And there's still a couple of Beanie Baby collectors out there. There's always going to be. But, same with baseball cards. Baseball cards were all the rage in the 70s. And then they started to decline. Comic books, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Books in general, people don't read anymore. And when I say that, I don't mean everybody. I just mean the number of people reading books has been steadily declining, and it continues to decline year after year. What can you do? Society's changing. Bajin Guy said Apple's intelligence is using RGB. I don't know what that means. I did see the Doom game got released. If I buy Doom, the Dark Ages, it's going to be for the Xbox. It's not going to be for the PC. I don't want to play it on a PC. Give me the controller. Let me hook it up to the big screen TV. I don't want to mess with all the settings. You know, you already have settings controls, by the way. But a video game to me is something you use a controller with, not a keyboard. Role-playing games, different story. Zork is Zork. Galaga is Galaga. So two very different things in 1982. Ben Laird said, great stream. Thanks, Carey and Mara. Thank you, Ben. John Williams says, thanks for the wonderful stream. Have a great weekend. Thank you, John. You too, my friend. John Downey says, I'm noticing more and more stores and restaurants using an iPad to process customer transactions. Well, yeah, because they can bring the machine to you, right? They can bring the iPad or the tablet, or in some cases, they have a point of sale machine that they bring to the table so they're not walking off with your credit card. And you don't have to get up and wait in line at the cashier. They do it right at the table, right in front of you. It's more secure. And it's easier than handling cash too, you know? So why not? When's the last time somebody ran one of those credit card, give the carbon paper? When's the last time you saw carbon paper? Sure, they still sell it somewhere. Somebody out there is still using it, but for the most of us, we haven't given that a thought in decades. All right, that's the point I'm trying to make. Things slowly fade out. They don't necessarily have a deadline. And when it happens, you often don't even realize it until someday it strikes you and you go, oh, yeah, now you mention it. Now you mention it. I haven't seen Garbage Pail Kids in a while. Whatever did happen to the Furby? You know that song, I Will Survive by Gloria Gaynor? Whatever happened to her? That cracked me up. All right, I think that's going to wrap it up for me for today. Thank you guys for hanging out. This was a cool build. Thank you to Silverstone for sending us the case. That's really cool. I like it a lot. And, you know, if everybody on YouTube was doing this, I wouldn't have any interest. So that is also another appealing part of it. It was also more fun. This is why I got into computers, not for the RGB and the liquid cooling and the cable management, not beyond just the standard cable management that happens in a case with no window. That's standard, that's always been around. It's gotten to a point now where it's just not fun anymore, not for me anyway. This is where the fun is. And this is more in tune with a business class computer and that design and ease of functionality and use to get in there and work on it. And most of what you see YouTube channels focusing on, which is, in my opinion, overly priced, unnecessary, over the top, and takes too much time and too much effort to not only build it and cable manage it, but also just to maintain it. I don't want to have to deal with RGB software causing a blue screen. These are problems I don't deal with in the business world. It never is a problem that has to be solved. But it has been a problem I have really had to solve on several occasions for customer builds, for unnecessary added expenses and complexities that did nothing but cause the customer more frustration down the road and more money to pay me to fix it for them. If you want to spend your money that way, I'm not here to tell you not to. I'm also not here to condone it. So if you want that kind of information, it's available all over YouTube. If you want more practical, realistic information in the business of what it is to run a business, to do this as a job, you're not going to make any money doing that stuff. Enthusiasts are not well known for paying other people to do their work. They are well known for buying unnecessary bling and adding unnecessary complexity, which is fine. It's not my thing. One of my favorite videos, and I'll end with this, Kyle, Bitwit, has this great YouTube video that explains it so well, so elegantly. Let's see, Bitwit RGB class. It's an older video, and it's called The Best. This is from 8 years ago, and it's called The Greatest Marketing Pitch of All Time. And you know, this might get me in trouble, but it's so funny, I'm going to re-air it, and if he wants to come after me for a copyright claim, he can have the money from the video. I really should get his permission before I do this, but I really want to share it with you. See, now I'm fighting with myself. Shouldn't be reusing other people's content without their permission. You should go watch it on his channel so he makes the money. But at the same time, I'll give you a little teaser. If you haven't seen this, the greatest PC marketing pitch of all time. Underneath this blanket, there's probably no audio to this, so that's also another thing. RGB glass. It does nothing. Anyway, watch that video. It's only less than 4 minutes long, and if you don't fall out of your chair laughing with the absurdity of what people are spending money on today, there is such a sarcastic truth to what he's saying here, but he's delivering it in a beautiful way. And oh, why doesn't that have a thumbs up? Let's take care of that. We'll see if I'll have Mara add a link to that in the show notes so you don't have to go looking for it. One of the best videos of all time, from my perspective. Standing ovation for Kyle. Brilliantly done. All right, guys. Thank you, of course, to our friends at SCD Keys for their continual offering of that 30% off to our audience. A shout out to Silverstone once again for sending us the case. And thanks to all of you, especially those contributions, some very generous ones, by the way, from, let me just make sure I get everybody, I don't miss anybody. Mark Gaines, our good friend Mark Gaines. Barry Klein, thank you so much. Charlie Purdy, very generous contribution from Charlie today. And for those super chats, right quick, let me just jump over here and give another thank you to those generous enough to support us here, not only as members, but also in addition or sometimes alternatively to membership. Peter, VC, and David Graham. Charles Griffin, also, I think I just saw that one, a $10 super chat. Jason Lewis with a $2 super chat said he's wishing everybody a great day and night. Thank you, Jason. Sorry I missed that earlier. Jason also renewed his membership. He's now a member for 36 months. Charlie Purdy contributed as well in super chat with a $20 super chat. And Frankie B, another very generous contributor here, with a $5 super chat today, along with David Graham again. Charlie Purdy also renewed his membership today. And our good friend Buster, who has done so much for us beyond words. I always want to make sure we give a special shout out to our good friend Buster, who's been really just helping us for so many years in the way that he supports us, not only financially, but even emotionally. He's just a great guy. And if you're lucky enough to have somebody like Peter Laycock, or himself, Peter Laycock, in your life as your friend, consider yourself lucky, because there's not too many people on the planet that are both supportive, generous, and just give off a vibe of positivity that is so addictive. And boy, the world needs more of that. And I need to convey more of it, to be honest. Peter makes it look easy. I don't know how he does it, but he's an inspiration to me. And one day, I hope to be able to be Peter Laycock when I grow up. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. Thanks to Mara for all the work that she does in the background, all the administrative tasks for YouTube, including today's thumbnail of old Carey talking to young Carey. It was stupid, but it was fun because it's an old case with new parts. Thank you so much. I'll see you all again very, very soon. Thank you all for hanging out. Until next time, bye for now.